What's good? Welcome back to Agitator, the modern day retelling of Rocky Balboa, starring two mystic juggalo weebs. Today, guest starring, return guest star Ryan Jackson, author, screenwriter, podcaster, host of Mutual Aberration Society, and all of its spinoffs. What's good?
I don't know. That's my intro.
Yeah, no, I like it. We need some more soundboard shit up in here.
What's good? What's good, fellas?
I've been telling David that's what we need is a soundboard so
Soundboard,
that
yeah.
when we drop a slur, we can just press a button and we can go, it wasn't us. I didn't say that. It was R2D2 saying
Yeah,
that
y'all
shit.
should
Kelby and
get
I are
like
going
some.
with the we are characters route with all this kind of stuff. It's fake. It's not real.
Yeah, y'all should get like a soundboard that has like some sort of like Miike kind of Miike centric shit. I don't know, just random sound clips from like Miike movies or
Mm-hmm.
fuck it, any
Mm-hmm.
kind of like Japanese weeb shit. You know what I'm saying? That would be
So
that would definitely take the podcast to a new era.
throwing
a new
throwing some whoops.
yeah those yeah
I was thinking about how in Korea with K-pop, the way that they say I is nega, right? And so having like the singing voice like nega, like we can just put that in.
That'll go over well.
It'll go over well. Be pretty good.
Yeah, plausible deniability because it's Korean.
Exactly.
It's Korean.
Yeah, they don't know. I've actually seen some really funny TikToks of black people getting mad about Korean music. It's like, what did they just say? And then people have to, explain to them the language thing. And then they're
Did
like,
you?
I don't care. It's still bad.
I posted this video from one of the you remember Nick or Treat? It was
Oh
like
yeah.
yeah, and it's like Nick or Treat. It's like yo, and he's like, wait a minute, what? Like what the fuck? Like, it's wild as fuck. I'm like, yo, they got away with it.
I've been seeing those I've been seeing those old 90s commercials pop up all over the place. There's some wild ones. There was that one with the slime and the in the like super soaker thing
The
that's
slime
like
got, yeah, where it's just
the
like people are
slime.
like getting money shots in the skirt, like little children at that too. So Jeffrey Epstein shit, like it's fucking like what the fuck?
That shit was
Like
Those
who
were
wild.
is
the
this?
days.
Who is this for? Like who is this commercial for? Like,
Oh, I think we know.
yeah, I've been reading. You guys ever read Program to Kill?
Oh, of course. I love Program to Kill.
Yeah, I was reading that shit, and it's just making me see that type of shit and everything now.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad that the left has gotten onto Program to Kill because it took a while. I feel like podcasts like Subliminal Jihad
Yeah, for
have
sure.
made Program to Kill kind of. There's also, I don't know if you've heard the podcast Program to Chill.
Yeah, I
That's
listened to
that's
both
a
of those. Yeah,
it's
yeah,
pretty good. It's pretty good. He did a great series on Timothy McVeigh with the woman who wrote Aberrations in the Heartland of the Real. It's
yeah.
a Program to
That's
Chill is really worth checking out. I don't know if he does it anymore though. I think my man quit.
no. Jimmy Fallon Gong, he's still putting up episodes. I believe. I think
Oh,
so.
okay. Okay.
Yeah, because
Okay.
I seen a new episode pop up not that long ago with some dude who just wrote a new book that's parapolitics related.
Hell yeah.
Some shit about I can't remember. I was just listening to it though. But yeah, that podcast is dope. He's got one about X that's fucking great. Have you listened to that one?
Mm-mm.
Oh shit. It just talks about how like the shit that he was into. Like
Mm.
he was staying with this guy who does porn down in this mansion in Miami, him and Ski Mask, and like how
I thought
they're
you were
in
talking Malcolm X at first
no,
until you
no,
said ski
not
mask.
XX Tentacion, one of
Tentacion.
the worst names ever. But like,
XXX Tentacion.
but I mean, in terms of just like, what does it mean? Like, I mean, just the name on paper is like, why is this name would never work? But then when you listen to like the podcast and it kind of seems like this kid like really did like sell his soul to the devil
Oh,
or some shit. Like,
100%.
you know what I'm saying? Like, what the fuck? Like, like, yeah,
Absolutely, he did. He absolutely did. There's also a really good biography of him by Jarrett Kobeck, who wrote
yeah,
I
that
Hate the
biography is
Internet.
awesome. Yeah.
It's really good. It's and
Yeah.
it doesn't. It's one of those pieces that balances with all due respect to the dead, what a piece of shit he was with how, kind of troubled the whole situation. Well, I could never get into his music though. I read that book and I thought to myself, I'm gonna listen to this dude's music because he's such a tortured artist. And then I remember I was in an airport. My flight was delayed. I popped on one of his albums and I heard like 3 songs and I said, this shit is not for me.
What about his Christmas EP? You ever hear that?
I don't know. The one I do like is the one that he did, oddly enough, with Rich Chiga. You remember that guy?
Yeah, Rich. He's changed his name to Rich Brian.
Oh, my bad. Okay, yeah. Rich Brian. Crown, I think, was what it was called. But that one was good. I don't know if he was dead or not yet. There's a lot of posthumous stuff that's been pretty good, but I think that so much of his music, with the albums that I heard anyway, kind of depend, like you have to be a teenager to really fuck with that. You know what I mean? Because he's so
the Question Mark album is a masterpiece. Like you gotta listen to it as an album because it'll be that suicide, slip my wrist, I fucking hate everything, I'm so sad. And then it's like, I'm a fucking like he I mean it's emo shit, but like I think he is one of the only artists of his age to in this time period, like that he was doing shit to sort of be able to construct an album and not just this singles shit. I've listened to that Question Mark album and the Christmas Carol shit, like was it called Hood Rat Christmas or something like that?
I liked that Question Mark album, but I also liked one of those early albums, the one that had what's that fucking song? Song
Jocelyn Flores.
Jocelyn Flores, I actually like that, but when you look into that Jocelyn Flores shit, that shit is creepy as fuck. Like, because you know the story about her, right? Like she was some fan of his, a young girl. She was like a young teenager, 15, 16, something like that, 15, 16 years old, that he had brought down to Florida. And then like they got into some he apparently he wanted her to model for him or something. Very sus. And apparently there was some sort of like relationship there, romantically or something of that nature. And then they got into some sort of disagreement and she leaves and then she commits suicide in her hotel. And the police come in there and they find her and they deem it suicide. But then when you see her suicide note, it's in X's handwriting. And then he releases this song without the family's knowledge or consent called Jocelyn Flores. And the way that they figured it out was one of the family members was in his car, and the song ended, and then it was like, that's Jocelyn Flores by Extension. And he's like, what the fuck? And like the whole shit about it is strange because it does seem like again, we get into that sort of, he was definitely into the occult. He was definitely into like, Crowley type shit, sacrifice. Remember what's the Ski Mask said that he sacrificed this, he had their friendship like split because he was like trying to like sacrifice his soul, or he sacrificed his soul. And again, that porno dude that they stayed with, like, has this fucking mansion with like Baphomets on the wall and fucking pentagrams and shit. It's just weird. It's just really weird shit. You're just like, wait a minute, what the fuck?
Reminds me of the Island Boys when one of the creepiest things that I can think of is when that one Island boy did a TikTok, which nobody really seems to talk anymore about, where he's like, yeah, I sold my soul and everything just kind of feels like nothing anymore. And I thought to myself, God damn, it felt true when I saw it.
And also it's weird, I think the reason people don't talk about that one is because of the other Island Boys video where the two brothers were making out. I think that like kind of canceled out.
Yeah. Was it true that they're called Island Boys because they were on Epstein's island? Is that a thing?
They say no, but there's a picture with these two boys with Jeffrey Epstein who look strikingly
Do they
similar.
have the dreadlocks and the face
They don't have that.
tattoos?
They're just little.
Oh, okay.
This is pre-dreadlocks, but they look.
If they were like 8-year-old boys and they
It's-
had the dreadlocks, and the
It's
face
back when
tattoos.
they were white.
They have face tats already and shit. Like, damn, you got face tats that young? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, before
No.
they were face tattoo Americans.
Yeah, before they were face tattoo Americans, Monster Energy drink Americans, as Kelby is. Before that happened, yeah, they look. It does look like them. They said it's not them, but who fucking knows, dude. There's so much fucked up shit going on. Like, I don't know. It's an interesting rabbit hole to go down when you really start to look about like certain people, specifically when they're really young, just sort of like rise from obscurity out of nowhere, and they sort of like rocket, and then you're like, what the fuck is that about? Like, you know what I mean? Like, and it's not because of anything that you can like reasonably like point from, like, it started here, point A, and track I can't speak, track the trajectory of like someone's, you know, path from relative obscurity to out of their stardom. When it's people like X, or like there's a lot of people who just sort of just kind of appear, and then you look into their backstory and you're just like, okay, like this guy's not like, he definitely was talented, but did he really have any sort of charisma? I mean, like he kind of did, I guess, but like it just seems like there's some other missing link to this, because you know so many people who had that story, right, who've been on the grind, like literally, like this dude was grinding for 10, 15, maybe longer years, and then finally popped. Guys like him, it was like, no, he was like 2 years and then he was gone.
He made
And
a
you're
song.
right, he made a song, and it was just
Mhm.
like unstoppable at that point. And it's weird. It's just a weird thing where you start to really question, like, and I've seen some weird shit. Like my time in and around like Hollywood and the industry, there's just certain people you're just like, yo, what the fuck? Like, how do you, like, something's not right. Like there's definitely people in certain positions who can sort of like literally open the gates of hell for you. You know what I'm saying? You know, like, and literally be like, now you're a thing. And for the and you know, I think the new Danny Brown album, you know what I'm saying, like he's talking about, you know, that you know, some rappers selling their booty hole, that type of shit, to quote Danny. I mean, I mean in my experience, there's some of them do, you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I've heard my fair share of shit where I'm like, oh really, oh okay, well that's all right, okay. Shout out to Danny Brown.
Well, somebody who did not sell their booty hole is a little man I like to call Takashi Miike. That is somebody who genuinely worked their way up through the ranks. He worked in V Cinema for a while and got his bona fides through doing every single job on a set that you could possibly ask for. Got his first directing job when another director dropped out. Of course, you know, with his V Cinema projects, a lot of it's Yakuza runs, so he's often very cagey about what happened to the other director. Creative differences, I guess. Did he lose a pig?
Creative differences.
Went on to direct some titty movie. Well, they're not really titty. They're not pinku movies. They are like lady cops in bikini movies. Really USA 2002 Skinamax type.
USA Up All Night.
USA Up All Night, Silk Stockings.
I've seen a couple of them. They kind of have that made for TV look, and they're not skin flicks either. It's really just, I don't know, that kind of magazine eroticism that's like, ooh, they're in bikinis and they're gonna solve a mystery.
Yeah. And now fast forward to 2022. I mean, he really obviously popped in about 1998, 1999. He is the godfather of this show. We named the show after him. And so anytime he comes out with a new project, we have to talk about it. And his newest project is as the supervising director on ONIMUSHA for Netflix. Dropped a few weeks ago based on the Capcom video game of the same name. I've got a lot of cool ONIMUSHA lore. I have some Reddit hater comments that I'm going to read to you guys. But before we get into all of that, Kelby, Ryan, have you played Onimusha? Do you have a history with the series? Because I do. I played everything. Dino Crisis, Onimusha, Devil May Cry, anything that to me they were untouchable at this period of time. Where I think the first game came out in 2002, which was right around the time I was getting out of games. But the first game came out, it still had those tank controls like Resident Evil and Dino Crisis had, but it was more action oriented. So that it was, even though it was after Devil May Cry, it was kind of a step back for Capcom because they reintroduced those clunky controls. But I'll stop talking. Did y'all play Onimusha or no?
Well, I played Onimusha, but I only played Onimusha at friend's house. It was one of those games that like I knew people that had it. So my only experience with Onimusha, the game, was always in that capacity where it's like I was over at a friend's house and we played it. And like I remember, him going, he had the fucking Oni gauntlet on and fucking, and like so like when the series came out, I was like, oh shit, like I remember this game. Like I remember playing this game. But yeah, that's my experience, but I actually never owned it, but I definitely played it. Yeah.
I didn't know it was a video game.
There you go.
Yeah. So what is this? What do you do having seen the anime and finding that out afterwards? What's the game like? You like
The game is like Resident Evil. It's got its static cameras. You are let me get his name right for the real ones out there. Let me pull up the lore. The first game, by the way, is called Onimusha Warlords.
You are Musashi, right? Musashi Miyamoto.
Not in the game. In the game, you're a guy named Samanosuke.
Yeah, you're right. It is Samanosuke. Yeah, now I'm remembering like that in the video game. Samanosuke. You know how they get those stupid scenes where they're like, yeah.
So he's the guy in the first game and the third game. You're a different dude in the second. The thing about Onimusha is that it does utilize historical figures in the game. The bad guy in part one is Oda Nobunaga, who was the first unifying emperor of Japan. I'll get back to him in just a second because I have some interesting info on him. But basically, it's pretty standard save the princess from the castle type shit. Evil emperor makes a deal with demons, Genma, right? And you are a powerful warrior who has to go in and save them. But it's got that, the only way I can describe it is the early Resident Evil aesthetic. You find keys, solve puzzles, creepy soundtracks, but it's all in this kind of Sengoku era Japanese village, right? And you're fighting strange creatures. It's much more action oriented, but not Devil May Cry action oriented, where you have dual pistols and a sword, and the action in that was much more fluid. It is I remember it as being, it never quite hits the level of uncanny creepiness that games like Dino Crisis, and which, even though it has a B movie name, is a genuinely creepy game, and Resident Evil 2 hit, right? It just never quite hit for me. I like the show a lot better than the game, but I wanted to really quickly, because I wanted to see, apparently Nobunaga is the bad guy in a lot of anime, and he's the bad guy in the first Onimusha. And so I Googled, why do Japanese people hate Nobunaga? And I found this post, which I thought was really funny. So he's complaining about this new anime that's coming out. This is in 2005, a new anime that's coming out that has Nobunaga as the bad guy. And so for people who don't know, there were three emperors. There was Nobunaga, I forget the middle one, and then Ieyasu, I think, was the last one. And they're responsible for unifying Japan. So that third one that I mentioned, if you've ever seen Silence, he's the guy who was like killing priests and shit like that. So these were the guys who united all the warring clans of Japan together and essentially made Japan super isolationist, and are credited with Japanese people having any culture at all, for not being overrun by Westerners. But Nobunaga, the first one, is really hated. How many times has Nobunaga been the villain in an anime or video game? Why do the Japanese hate him? I don't get it. he came really close to unifying Japan, and Tokugawa, that's the last one. It's like Tokugawa Ieyasu or whatever, who was a protege of his, finished the job. Really? Why do they hate him? I don't get it. Why is the only game I've ever played that portrays him in a good light Kessen, a game he's dead in before the start of? I realize that there are many reasons why Nobunaga might not be liked and why he can be debated about forever. I mean, he did some nasty things, like wiping out the Hiei monks. And so you say, okay, interesting. But he did what he thought he had to do to unify his country. I see a lot more praise for Tokugawa, who probably has even more blood on his hands than Nobunaga. So you go down a few posts. It's just interesting, like Japanese history autists who are debating like whose war crimes are acceptable or not.
Yeah.
Let's see. A little disclosure. I'm an Oda lover. Out of the three, Nobunaga, Hideyoshi, and Ieyasu, I think Oda is hands down the favorite in my book. Why? He got the ball rolling and shook up the power structure, was quick to adapt to new ideas like firearms, cunning, aka cutting off the head of the snake with Imagawa in an all-or-nothing battle, and truly seemed to be able to pick out superior qualities in others. Still, he had his faults, and I think it is what has left him open to be the bad guy. First off, he was, and I mean truly, ruthless. I mean, burning a whole mountain of men, women, and children, Mount Hiei, just to get the monks. Yikes. Yeah, that's a yikes for me too. Let alone that one action set him up as a religious threat to all who truly believed in Buddhism. That's just one example, but yeah, that kind of leaves him open to be painted in a bad light. Second, I think Oda really runs counter to what a lot of Japanese really think is the best road. I mean, in a nutshell, I see control as being the buzzword for Japan in almost everything. You can't have that be your goal and then glorify someone who sidesteps the rules. Coincidentally, I also suspect the same trait is what makes him appeal to American students so much. Anyhow, in a country where Tokugawa's answer of wait in the old school story of what to do with the bird who won't sing. So basically it's like Oda says, like, if the bird won't sing, I'll kill the bird. The second guy says, if the bird won't sing, I'll force it to. And then the last guy says, I'll wait. In the old school story of what to do with the bird who won't sing is considered to be the wisest what to do. But yeah, so I thought that was it. And now for all time, Nobunaga is in anime and Onimusha and just everything is like the devil. Like there are actual legends of him. You know, he aligned himself with devils, much like XXX Tentacion.
Yeah. A lot of synchronicities there.
Synchronicities between the two of them. Yeah. 500 years from now, the bad guy and everything is XXX Tentacion.
New listeners here for the ONIMUSHA review are wondering what the fuck is this show? They're talking about XXX. We always tie it in. We always tie it together.
We loop it back.
Who's the emperor in The Last Samurai? Was that a real dude?
Let's see. Who was the emperor in The Last Samurai?
Oh, Meiji.
Oh, that was from the Meiji dynasty.
So yeah, that was from the Meiji dynasty.
Yeah, that was after. Yeah. But they specifically mention in the anime that we're about to talk about, which I meant to look up, like the Sangako War or something, like the war between samurai that Musashi was in. That I think was a Nobunaga thing, but I will look that up later. Anyway, so he's the bad guy. That's a long way around the barn of saying that he was the bad guy in the first one. And the third one is notable for starring, I know Ryan's going to know who this is, but Jean Reno was the star of
The Professional?
Yeah.
Leon?
Yeah. Some crossover there. So you get to play as Jean Reno because it's like some kind of time swap where the hero from part one goes to modern day France and Jean Reno goes to Sengoku period in Japan. And they and then eventually they team up and fight demons together, which I think is tight. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, that's pretty sick. I liked it's just I like I'm a sucker for anything that has to do with like this period specifically, like anything that's around the Edo period, anything that's a little bit after or before it, like I can't help but like something about like the samurai, this idea of like these people who had a code, and then the whole history behind like the samurai and how they became sort of like sell swords and swords for hire and Ronin, and then the rise of the Yakuza who were gamblers. Some of them were samurai, um, rogue samurai, more or less. Like so, like anything that traffics in that kind of shit, I'm just a sucker for. I actually, it's funny because I think Karando Mitsutaki, the one guy who I've had on my podcast for from Japan, was actually he actually kind of complained to me about like a lot of like how a lot of people in Japan identify with the samurai. And he's like, most of us aren't fucking samurai. He was like, we're like the peasants, the people who fucking hated the samurai. He's like, but like as a culture, it's become such a fucking like a prominent export and a symbol of Japan that like it's he views it as this weird sort of like twisting of sort of the Japanese psyche to identify as samurai culture even now, which is very when he said that, it made me think about it. Like, yeah, you know what? That's an interesting point because I've never really viewed it that way. Obviously
Hey,
because
you
I'm not
guys know that
Japanese.
thing that's really cool that you like a lot? That's awesome.
No, he still likes it. He still liked it, but he just felt like that, like in terms of like the people in Japan as in general, like kind of there's too much of an identification with the samurai. Um, he felt, what I'm saying, which again, like I've never actually heard someone say that before. But it was just an interesting perspective for someone from there to have. I was like, oh shit, like I
It's
wouldn't
like
have thought
how
that.
how we as Peckerwoods really
Mm.
associate with our Viking blood,
Mm.
without taking anything into it. That we would probably come from the peasants or whatever. And
Right,
I mean,
right.
I'm
Or
from
like,
Czechoslovakia, so I'm definitely just trash down all the
well,
way down the line.
well, it's like people who talk about like white people in America who try to identify with like slave holders, and it's like the majority of white people didn't own slaves because
Right.
they weren't poor. Like they were poor, or they were poor or working, whatever. Like you had to have money to do that. So it was really one of those things where it's like, yeah, the majority of y'all wouldn't have owned shit anyways. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so it's weird to identify with when they probably looked at you like, the rich plantation owner, the Leonardo DiCaprio type motherfucker from would
Right.
look at you with the average white person like, you know what I mean? Like you're
Bro,
poor.
get your bread up.
Right, right, exactly.
Fuck is
Like,
wrong with
like you
you?
know what I'm saying? On some
You don't
classic
even
shit.
own anybody.
Right. You don't have no slaves. Get the fuck away from me. You're gross.
It's like having no host. I looked up Sangaka. I think it's the wrong word because I found a Nepali porno website called Boss Sangako First Night (parentheses Nepali sex story). Sex stories in Nepali. Let's see here if there are any good quotes. Shower, Lida. We both were naked. Sermiro, boobs, grab, Gardai, suck, Garak Nouveau. I was playing with his dick. Shower. Anyway. So
What the fuck?
I have no idea. Who knows what that just did to my computer? But not taking this one to school anymore. Let's see. Anyway, it's mentioned in the show, which I thought was interesting. Let's see. Oh, Oda also revolutionized warfare. He was basically like a tricky guy. He was a tricky dude. He used a lot of, hey, I'm gonna be here on this day. You better come fight me. And then they would show up and there'd be people surrounding them, and he would kill them all. And he actually got killed because he went to a tea ceremony with no he wasn't strapped, basically.
He got caught lacking. Yeah, yeah.
He got thank you. He got
got caught lacking. Yeah, yeah. That's how they always go, right?
They're just like, I'll be all right. I'll be all right. I'll be all right. So we get to Onimusha 2023. There was going to be a movie, in 2006. It was the producer of the movie was the same guy who did Silent Hill and Resident Evil, the ones with Mila Jovovich.
Yeah.
And the director was actually Christoph Gans, I think his name was.
Christopher Gans. Yeah. He did Brotherhood of the Wolf. Yeah.
And,
Which I
and
thought
Silent Hill.
Yeah, he did Silent Hill too. You're right. Didn't Roger Avery, Quentin Tarantino's bestie, the guy who killed someone with a car? Shout out to him.
Shout out, friend of the show.
Shout out to that podcast that they do together. Fucking yeah. That I remember liking.
Feel it coming in the air. That's about a hit and run, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Shout out to Phil Collins. Yeah, shout out. That's my shit. No, but yeah, like I did like Christopher Gans. I could see him doing an ONIMUSHA film. He would have did. I think he would have did a good job potentially.
So all the pre-production on the film was done. They were ready to go. They had casted the whole thing. The guy who plays the hero in the ONIMUSHA games was cast as the lead because in the game they used his likeness. Right. They had everybody except for one role who so in the script they change up the plot a little bit. They add white people to it like they do. So there is a British guy who's trying to save his girlfriend who's one of the sacrificial princesses, right? And what happened was, wait for it, Heath Ledger died. So Heath Ledger died in 2008. And this same producer who made Silent Hill, Resident Evil, and was going to make ONIMUSHA was also making the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus at the time.
Oh, yeah.
Which is Heath Ledger's last movie that he died during the filming of. And so all the resources went into saving this movie. And ONIMUSHA got pushed back. But unfortunately, it got pushed back to 2008, which is when an actor's strike happened. So they couldn't fill the role of that British guy in the movie. And development hell type shit took hold, entropy, and the ONIMUSHA movie never happened. But I looked at the script and it looks like it would have been shit anyway. So
I mean, it had a British guy in it.
Yeah.
Honestly,
right. You know what this ONIMUSHA does not have? Well, it does. It has Alfred.
Right?
Alfred.
Yeah.
Alfred.
Oh, I love
but he's like a weird gay freak who gets killed. So
Alfred was on some different shit, bro.
you've gotta Miike-ize the white dude if you're gonna have a white dude in a samurai movie. You gotta
Miike-isms in this movie, dude. Like I love seeing the Miike touches in this, but I guess we'll talk about that later. Anyway, fast forward. The movie comes out, it's a long movie, right? What's the difference between a show and a movie at this point?
It's just splitting it up into episodes.
It's a 3.5 hour movie.
Yeah.
You know? But I'll just call it a movie. So it comes out mostly positive reviews, 6.9 out of 10 on IMDb or RT or whatever that is. But the ONIMUSHA stands are not happy with this at all. They think that the lore of the show has been corrupted. So I have a few fun screenshots that I took to talk about that. Let's see here. Oh, no, that's a Donald. My first screenshot is from Donald J. Trump. Happy Thanksgiving to all, including the racist and incompetent attorney general. I save Trump stuff. Oh, bunch of couches. We'll get to it here soon.
This is why there was so much corruption in that last episode. We know not to pull out the phones around the task cam,
right?
And we do anyways.
And we do. Well, I do specifically. This is from Drunk Richtofen. Honestly, I was a bit disappointed, though that might be me being a bit more bothered about how much of ONIMUSHA's canon the series seems to ignore. Bro, How many people know about Onimusha's fucking canon?
I'm surprised. There's always heads for everything, but it's just weird when it's
There's
something like this.
Onimusha heads.
Yeah, like it's like what the fuck?
I'm a hell of a lore nerd, so breaking lore established rules is always a pet peeve. Other than that, I thought that the story in general was a bit more, and some of the characters were either boring, pointless, or nonsensical. We'll get to that. On the plus side, the action outside of one or two scenes were really enjoyable, and some other characters were quite interesting, so it isn't all bad. So he gave it a 5 out of 10. Abdullah FTW. Abdullah? I don't know about that. Writers clearly don't care about the Onimusha lore because the Oni Gauntlet and Oni Power is the core of the series, and they are making a samurai reject that. Not only that they make the gauntlet bad, but that is never the case with Onimusha lore. No iconic monsters, no references, no Oni sword magic. This is not an Onimusha. This is someone who just wanted to tell their weird story about Musashi and used Onimusha IP to get approved. Yeah, cry about it, Coat, bitch.
Right.
Probably.
Go write your own Onimusha fanfic, bro. Like, what the fuck? Like Jesus, what the fuck? I don't know, man. People are, this is my problem that I've it's ironic that like this is a podcast with 3 writers and I'm saying this, but we have this weird obsession with like story and plot that is so fucking annoying. Like, and I don't know who to blame. I was listening to Peter Greenaway. You know who Peter Greenaway is? Greenaway. He's a director. He directed that movie, The Cook, The Thief, and his wife or whatever. He's okay. Yeah, he's a very interesting filmmaker, but he was doing some like talk for like BAFTA or something like, or the BBC or one of them fucking British fucking film consortium bullshit. And he was like, he said something that really struck like a chord in me, which was like, he's like, we have a generation of filmmakers who are writers, and it should be a generation of filmmakers who are painters. Like,
yeah,
he was, you know what I'm saying? He was like, ever since like Charlie Chaplin has been this way, since going back that far, where it's like the film industry has become this thing about like writing, and it's like, really, this is a visual medium, and like it shouldn't be driven by story and plot like the way that it is. And I really think like when he said it and he put it and he used those words, like this idea that it should be like, filmmakers should be painters or should be inspired by painters. I felt like, yeah, that's real. And when you watch things that are made now, and when you see sort of the criticisms that people have, it's all about like this like bullshit, like the story, it doesn't have a character, like it doesn't matter, like, you know what I'm saying? That shit is like irrelevant. Like there's like The Killer. I don't know if you guys seen The Killer, right? The new David Fincher movie.
But
right?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So the complaints about The Killer are like, it's not enough story. And I'm like, what the fuck are you like? It like this idea that like the characters have to have this sort of predetermined one size fits all, Joseph Campbell, hero's journey bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, as if you can't tell a story that takes place, in a specific span of time, whether that's one night, whether that's a series of days, and it's really about this one incident that triggers this whole thing, and we follow this person as they go from this to that, and whatever happens and occurs in between is just like part of what makes the story compelling or enjoyable. Like, people think that there's a problem with that. If there's no sort of like arc, or like the character has to learn a lesson, or the character has to, it's like very like ABC 1, 2, 3, like I don't vibe with that shit, because all the cool shit is like, yeah, there's some cool shit that we can point to that does those things, right? But there's so much that it's just leaving out so much other cool shit out there that doesn't adhere to this template, that this fucking, this fucking cookie cutter formula shit that like we've just become. And I get it, it's a business, right? And when you're making commercial art, like the people are going to go, well, it works, right? And there's an established sort of and that's what you guys talk about a lot, right? Which is like trying to find that happy medium where you're acknowledging that like you're trying to have a certain level of success, for lack of a better word, and you're trying to have you're trying to sell as many books as possible, right? Or get as many eyes on the work as possible, but also trying to do it in a way that caters to the market, but isn't completely void of what makes you unique as an artist, what makes you like human, because a lot of this shit doesn't feel human. That's why when people started freaking out about AI, the people that freaked out the most about it were the people who kind of are already like doing that thing that AI does.
The
You know,
people who care about plot and
right.
and
Because you're already
shit.
doing that shit, so you feel it threatens you. You know what I mean? When I feel like the average motherfucker who's a creative, I hate to use that fucking descriptor, but fuck it. The average creator isn't worried about that shit. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, because they kind of understand, like, that's not the point. It's not, who cares if a computer can replicate what, like, it's not doing what I'm doing. And first of all, it's not a human. So like, why would I worry? Why would I care? But then there are people that we know who really fucking, they look at it as an existential threat to their existence.
It's like a
Yeah.
carpenter in the age of hand tools being concerned about the drill or something. Like,
Right. It's a
oh
tool,
no,
right?
a robot ain't gonna come in and take I hand build these things. Like, okay, bro, you can still just like pick up a faster tool. And we gotta David and I have been fucking around with AI quite a bit, and whoo boy, it's there's a lot of doctrine that's got to go into it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it'll speed up the process of getting like raw material on the table of just that boring story shit that none of us give a fuck about. But you gotta dress it way up.
Nobody cares. Like, that's the thing. Like, people think that like being able to come up with like a plot or like an outline with a fucking, beginning, middle, end of 3 act. That shit is, anybody can do that. Like, anybody can do that. That's not really the point. Like, it's not about, it's about the execution, right? It's not about like the thing. Like, the thing, like, if
Yeah.
you gave 3 different writers the same idea, you're gonna get 3 different fucking variations of a thing. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's all about how that person executes the idea. It's not the idea, it's not the concept. But yet there's this obsession with not just the people like who are getting paid to write uh consistently, but it's an obsession with the fucking consumer, with the fucking people who are like consuming this shit. They seem to be obsessed with it in a way that's weird. They're like, oh, like, it's not like this or it's not like that. And it's like, yeah, fuck you. You can make it yourself if you want to. You know what I mean? But like, this idea that it would be better if it was your way, like, even that Onimusha shit that David just read, like, that shit sounds awful. Like, I like, that version of Onimusha, like what the fuck, that doesn't sound any different than anything else that's out there. At least this version was interesting. You know what I mean? Like, I enjoyed it. Like, I thought that it was uh a pretty entertaining, take on this material based on a video game. Because when it's based on a video game, let's be real, like,
Yeah.
the track record is pretty, the bar is low when it comes
And
to
I
like
Just
still
unlock something for me, real quick, because Ryan unlocked something for me. It's the idea that fans are interested in this. It's because it's what makes what we do accessible to people who don't do what we do. If there are rules to it, an ABC 1, 2, 3 thing that you can follow and you can point to and say, that's a plot hole, or they didn't adequately deny the call, or whatever. People can feel like, if not for my circumstance, that could be me. And you can't do that with a David Lynch movie or any of the movies that we really like. You can't point to them and be like, well, where does the hero reject the call in this one? I don't know. So it's not good.
Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah, you're right. It's like a checklist for people who are like, like, oh, this is how I can like basically critique something, is based on this sort of arbitrary list of, or, of things that are supposed to be there. And if they're not there, then it's like they get some sort of validation out of that, because at that point they can say, oh, it's not good now because it doesn't have these things. And that's like, that's stupid. That's like anti-art, dog. That's like, you know what I mean? That's like, you can find an example of, in any medium, you can find an example of something that doesn't do whatever the sort of uh whatever you think of as the definitive example of what a great piece of work is in that medium. You can find another great piece of work that does the absolute counter to all that shit, and it still works. But people don't want to acknowledge that. They just want to be, again, like, it's fanboy shit. I get it. And when it comes to video games, shit, it's gonna be probably even worse. You know what I mean? Weirdly enough, but like, I feel like video games have this weird kind of fandom where the expectation for anything involved with the game that's not the game is unrealistic as fuck. You know what I mean? Because like, in their mind, there's never going to be something that someone creates based on the game that's ever going to measure up. And they're kind of right, because this thing was a game. You know what I'm saying? And a game is a totally different experience, and it's an immersive experience. It's an experience that's less passive because you're actually involved and you're doing shit in the game. And a fucking movie's not that. A book is not that. So like, if you're expecting the book or the movie to feel like the game, you're already kind of like, you don't have actual like realistic expectations anyways. Like, you're already setting the bar. It's like going to fucking watch golf and being mad because they don't slam dunk. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
it's like, this ain't the shit, dog. It's different sports. Like, you know what I mean? What the fuck are you talking about? Yeah.
Like, imagine they make a Death Stranding game or a movie, and automatically people are gonna go, all right, how are you gonna make me feel as invested in this child as if I traverse this harsh terrain for 16 hours with it? You're not going to. It's a movie. Like, that's not going to happen.
And it just feels, because media has all become like this amorphous sort of blob where everyone thinks everything is kind of like cross-pollinating and melding together, that people just have this expectation, it's a flattening of fucking art. It's a flattening of culture. It's a flattening of everything, where everything is this boilerplate, like, blanket sort of expectation. And it's like, no one's making any designations at all. Like, it's just like, oh, it's supposed to be, it's like, no, it's a fucking game. Like, you know what I mean? Or it's a fucking
and I think that the game, by the way, this is something that I found out recently, because Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order was on sale for $8, so I bought it, and I've been playing that, and I think Star Wars is best as a game, honestly. And I love the movies. I grew up on the movies. I'm not a hater of the new trilogy either. I liked all of them. They're fine. They're good. But as a game, it's cool to be a Jedi, and it's cool to fight monsters with a lightsaber.
You like that Rian Johnson one?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, the movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Jedi one. What the fuck is it? The Last Jedi? What is
I
it?
thought that was the only
Last
good
Jedi.
Star Wars movie. That's my
like that Rian Johnson one.
I did. I like that. I like that one. I liked the third one's J.J. Abrams too.
Yeah,
right?
J.J. Abrams came back and was like, "Yo, Rian Johnson fucked all this up. Let me fix it back to where I had it." And he was like, "No, dog, you actually made it worse, dog. Stop."
So much worse. She's
Like,
the daughter.
I thought it was all cool.
No, but listen.
Cool.
No, listen. If that's cool, if you like it, great. That's a hot take, but it's also a contrarian one, which I appreciate. Even if that's not the purpose of your take. But my thing is, like, it only proved to me, like, I was really hard on The Last Jedi, right? Until J.J. Abrams came back and then doubled back, and I was like, oh yeah, there's worse things that you could do. Like J.J. just, I was like, made me retroactively appreciate The Last Jedi, at least, because it's like, dude, you just went back to the shit. Like, what? Like,
and weren't people? This is actually a great example, because as far as why I liked it, like, I fucked with The Last Jedi because visually it did a lot of interesting shit, like as a movie and auditorial. Like, there was a lot of crazy like sound shit that they did in Last Jedi, which Star Wars was initially famous for, was like the crazy sound, not just the score, but just the sound effects. That's like, it's a legend in that arena. But Last Jedi, like, doubled down on that like visual audio side of it, and pissed a lot of people off with the story elements. And I was like, oh, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, I don't give a fuck. I was one of those people, like, I don't care if Rian Johnson decided to throw the lore to the side. Like, that really wasn't it for me. I just thought that, like, there were just certain things that he did that were just sort of like I was like, oh, you killed Luke. That like Luke just kind of like he just was like, how did he die? Remember, he just like sort of like made himself. He like he did like some sort of like what's the when you fucking meditate and you appear somewhere else. What the fuck is that shit?
He did the clone jutsu from
But
Naruto.
yeah, but there's a specific,
But it like
what the fuck is that called? I know you guys know. What am I talking about? Where like
Astral project.
astral projection. There you go, David.
Yeah.
He astral projected, and then because he astral projected so hard, he just like died. I was like,
You gotta be careful when you're doing that shit, dude. You gotta be, when you start astral projecting, they don't tell you that, but if you do it hard enough,
I was like, dog just disappeared. Like,
Yep.
like he just went out like that. Like,
you became
cool.
one with the force.
And
he
also,
went
he was
out
like,
what
about that? What about that? What about that milking the thing, that alien titty thing? With
yeah,
that shit was weird. I appreciate that weirdness. Yeah, I was kind of into that. I would drink it too. They should, I would. They should bottle that alien titty milk and sell that.
And the way he was drinking it too, he was looking all feral and shit. He was like, it was.
I fuck with Rogue. I fuck with Rogue One. I thought Rogue One was good. I
like that one.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it, every Star Wars movie I've seen, I like The Mandalorian too. I liked, but I do think that it's a better universe for games. I think it's just better for games. I mean, it's a no-brainer. The game mixes Dark Souls.
Well, that was George Lucas's intention, really, wasn't it? With the first one, he was kind of like, he wanted it to be this thing where he could sell shit. Like, he wanted to sell toys and board games and all of that shit. Like, he had this vision for it initially anyways.
It's pure aesthetics. There has yet to be a really compelling Star Wars story outside of some of the earlier books.
Yeah.
Some of the earlier books had them, but the movies have, I mean, what's the story?
It's like a basic ass,
there's a prince. It is the hero's journey.
Right. It's Joseph Campbell 101 shit.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not really, it's
not super compelling. And neither, honestly, is the story of the Mandalorian. It's whatever.
It's Lone Wolf and Cub, dog. Like, the Mandalorian is Lone Wolf and Cub. Like, you know what I mean? Speaking of Japanese shit, like, it's Lone Wolf and Cub. Like, so like if you like Lone Wolf and Cub, you probably fuck with the Mandalorian. Because it's very similar, pretty much. Guy walking around with a baby, much like shout out to Mercy, this book by this guy named Kelby Losack. You should probably check that out. A guy walking around with a young child, that kind of shit, for sure. Shout out to Death Stranding. We just already mentioned that. That's in the zeitgeist. That's some shit that people, so like, again, using that kind of, like, people don't understand. Like, David, you do this a lot where you just like, oh yeah, I like that thing, I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna do my thing with it. Like, people, you're allowed to do that. Like, people have been doing that forever. And that's what it comes back to what I was saying with Kelby, was that, like, the execution. It's not the concept. It's not the idea. Like, we all have ideas. Ideas aren't shit. Like, people act like ideas are currency. They're not. It's the execution of the idea. You know what I mean? Like, anybody can have an idea. I have 50 ideas every day, but like, when you sit down and try to make that idea into a thing, that's what really, that's what you measure it by, really. That's when you really, like, are putting sort of like your nuts on the table, is when you sit down to make that into a thing. And what is that thing that you've made? And because, again, like, people come up, I'm pretty sure if people know you guys right, they come up to you and like, oh, I got an idea for a book, or I got an idea. Like, do it all the time. It's like, yeah, everybody does. My mom has one. The old dude on, that was jacking off outside, the police arrested him. He has ideas. You know what I mean? Like, there's people, everyone has an idea for a movie, a story, a book, or whatever. But like, yeah, what is that idea? Like, it's usually not an idea that has been brought to life at all in any form, shape, or fashion. Or if it has, it's completely awful. And that's because it comes down to, like, it's like the 90-mile-an-hour fastball. Either you have it or you don't. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't really think writing is something you can teach. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think you could teach someone who can write to be better. Like, I think you could teach someone the craft, right? Craft can be learned, but there are just some people. I know
it's voice. Yeah, it's voice. And if you sat people down, if you really if somebody, nobody's going to do this. If you sat someone down and scientifically showed them what rhythm was, how sentences can ebb and flow, and how, when to go hard and when to pull back, I'm sure if you broke it down, you could do it in math terms, but nobody's going to do that. And what's really funny about it, this is the eternal mystery for me, is that there are some people who just don't hear it. They don't, I'm talking writers and readers.
Right.
Some people just don't hear it. They don't care. They'll read something that is so, like Gene Wolfe, the Book of the New Sun. They'll read that and say, I don't know. And for me, I'm like, you weren't captivated by every sentence that man put on the page. No.
Not only no, but what was happening exactly?
What are you talking about? Yeah, what was happening?
This is bad writing because I can't picture it like a movie in my head.
Yeah, because
again, exactly, because they can't picture like a movie. It's not a movie, dog. But you know what I mean? Like, again, people have these weird expectations on shit. They like the game. It's not like the game. Like, yeah, that's a video game. Yeah, you're right. It's not. It's different. It's not the same shit.
It's gonna be different.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that people had, issues with this ONIMUSHA adaptation, but like,
I thought it was a masterpiece.
I loved it. Great. Yeah, I loved it. And honestly, when it comes down to like watching shit on Netflix, I'm like, this is some shit that's like counter to the majority of the shit I see on Netflix. You know what I mean? In terms of like, well, let me just say this. Anytime Netflix buys something from like somewhere else, it's usually going to turn out at least different. Because it hasn't gone through the Netflix machinery or the Netflix filters for it to become super Netflixy. You know what I mean? Like we all know what that is, like Netflixy. So ONIMUSHA didn't really feel that way to me at all. And you could tell, like you said, Miike. You can tell Miike's influence over this as sort of the executive director. There's so many moments in it that I was just like, oh yeah, that's some Miike shit. Like I'll point one out. An episode 5, I think it might have been the end of episode 5. With the sisters, the fucking
that's the best joke in the whole show.
Right. Like it gets to the point where you think you're gonna have this battle, and then like Musashi just like burks all of. He's like, "Fuck these dumb bitches!"
The brothers get a whole episode of battle, and then the sisters show up, and they're like, and he's just they beat him once, and then they come back, and they say, "Oh, now we're gonna flay the skin from your bones," and he just goes. And it's literally the punchline of the whole episode. He just goes whoosh, and cuts them all in half. And then it's like, boop, that's it. Roll credits. Like
it's like a fucking single swipe, and you just see their body parts dissected, like just fucking flying through the air. And it's like over. Yeah, I love that. That shit was like.
I wonder too, with with Musashi being such a famous figure and ONIMUSHA pulling from this, is I forget who said this. Kelby, who said history is fan fiction in our Discord? Do you remember that?
I remember seeing that.
Was that Glenn? Did Glenn say that?
It might have been Glenn.
Or Eddie. Glenn? I think Eddie said.
Glenn agreed with it.
Or did Eddie say that was like a great hot take? I think I saw that in the Discord. It might have been.
I think it was Glenn. I think you're right. Yeah. But that's what this reminds me of, because is ONIMUSHA, if the Japanese were to make, this is Abraham Lincoln fighting Hitler. You know what I mean? Like Miike is just taking the Yoshioka brothers, this lore of Musashi and being like, but what if Musashi is really old, but he has a gauntlet that gives him demon power, and Hitler in this case has made a pact with demons to grow super long arms. What would happen? I'd watch that shit, by the way. Yeah. I would definitely tune in.
No, I agree with that like Eddie's point that like history, is kind of like, it's in terms of like all biopics or any sort of like historical whether it's books or film, it is kind of fan fiction. Like, even if they're trying to be like super historically accurate, you're not actually getting the truth. You're getting a variation upon like what may or may not be true based on the facts that we know. It's never completely, like, documentaries aren't actually 100% completely the truth,
unless they're about Joseph Kony. That one's real.
Kony 2012. Well, I wonder what happened to dude. Last time I saw that dude, he was beaten off in public, and then it was over for him after that. I was just
That's what happens to all true geniuses. The man gets them.
You know, yeah,
Whack, whack, whack,
he
whack,
definitely
whackity
got
whack.
MK altered or something. Like that was
He
crazy.
did.
Like, I've
He
never,
did.
I've
He got
never
too
seen.
close to the truth about
Yeah,
Coney.
I never seen someone out like literally go from like this person pushing this. I mean, I guess he was the start. He was like the first kind of like start of that viral kind of
Loose Change was first, I think, and then Coney. He went Loose
yeah, I guess
Change and then
I guess
Coney.
loose change, but loose change was more like something that went viral on YouTube, right? You know what I'm saying? It was a fucking documentary or whatever, you know, again, scare quotes. But like he was a guy who got online and promoted sort of this, you know, if you want to call it a movement, this pseudo movement to sort of like that specifically wanted to like get Joseph Kony, right?
Change something in a
Change
country that's not America.
and then like
Where have we heard this?
and then like I mean you hear it all the time, but but yeah, like fucking I don't think I think at that moment like shit changed.
Yeah.
Like when dude like came with the Coney 2012 shit and then like it became super viral and people started to pay attention and then like he had this psychotic break for lack of a better description and
He was
started
the first person to go viral and also lost his mind. Like,
right.
What happens with most early people who don't have an immune system for this kind of shit, they go crazy. And I think that's probably what it was. I think that he you know, it's a mixture of wanting to help, but also really seeing the ways that helping could benefit you. So I think that I still am waiting for like a really good Coney 2012 follow-up document, like about the documentary itself. I'm surprised nobody has tackled that. You know, we've got Alex's War, but we don't have whatever that guy's name is, or because I think he's probably a super. Is he still alive? He might be dead.
That's a good question. I don't know.
I don't know.
They should call it they should call it Coney 2024.
Yeah.
There you go. Free idea. That idea ain't worth shit. It's all about the execution. Somebody got to make
whoever
it
does it.
Yeah.
Whoever does it.
It's
Whoever does
right
it.
there.
So Onimusha 2023, supervising director Takashi Miike follows Miyamoto Musashi. Book of Five Rings.
modeled after
Toshiro
Mifune.
Toshiro Mifune. Yeah.
Toshiro Mifune. And it essentially it opens with him fighting 10 dudes at once. It's a great opener, great action scene. In order to earn the right to take this gauntlet from a monastery in the mountains. Not sure. Now that I think about it, I'm not sure what sent him on the mission at first. Who cares? I guess.
Right. Yeah. I love that they didn't waste time on that. I love that. Like, it was just like, fuck it. Just dropped you in. Like, yeah.
But he goes out with a band of ninjas, for lack of a better term. Well, they're samurai, but you know, they have like,
for lack of a better term for these samurai, he goes out with some ninjas.
You know,
so he's
close
tasked,
enough.
they're all tasked to basically he hires them because Goromoru, or however you say his name, the roly-poly, the hawk guy, he's explaining it to the monk Kaizen, where he calls them the assistants to the assistant. So like Masashi, or whatever his name is, he's sent
Musashi?
to Musashi. He is.
How do you come up with Masashi first? I wonder, what does Masashi think about Israel Palestine? Where does Masashi fall?
That's a good question.
He just you know, he just
I need
don't
to know
want to fight no
Masashi
more.
stands.
He's been praying that there'll be no more war, and all the people will say
he's probably pro Palestine. Masashi, he's probably one of those Jews for peace, the ones you see in the pictures.
I bet he's not really Jewish.
Oh, hot take.
He was just like, what ethnicity could I get away with?
Oh, a
Um,
little light, modest Yahoo humor for the middle of the show.
but yeah, anyways, he's tasked with stopping the rebellion or something up in the mountains, but he's supposed to stop old dude that he's going and fighting and everything. And these,
Iman.
yeah,
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 Even though it looks like lemon when
lemon,
yeah, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
Iman. It's perfect. Like, yeah, so Iman, which is again, like, what is it with Japanese villains in sort of shows and in movies where there's always this villain that's like, you see it in Berserk too, like there's always this twink who's like
no,
very
it's a Miike thing for sure. Have you watched Blade of the Immortal
yeah,
or
yes,
or
Mm.
13 Assassins?
Yeah.
Miike's villains or Kakihara from Ichi the Killer.
or
Miike's
Crow
villains
Zero
or
Two.
Crow
But
Zero Two.
it's President Mike's work, but I see it across so much Japanese shit. There's always this
Yeah.
villain that's like super like androgynous and like very
Yeah,
like,
this guy has mascara on. Like
right.
it's pretty
It's
and
fucking,
heels. And he's wearing heels.
and at first
And
I thought, I used to think like, yo, this is just a Mikeism, but then I'm like, as the more I watch it, I'm like, there's like, it's a lot, it goes back and it's like across.
it's almost as if they feel a certain way about homosexuals.
Right, like just homosexuals are evil. Like, what is that? Is that like the thing?
I
Like,
didn't
what
say
the-
it, bro. I didn't say it.
I mean,
You said it.
I'm
know.
honestly posing the question, like, what the because it's so present in a lot of Japanese shit.
Well, the
Where it's just
sinister homosexual is
like the villain
a
is, you
great
think,
archetype.
yeah, but you think the villain's always going to be this like very formidable, like fucked up looking, like, you know what I mean, like a big bruiser, and then you see, and it's like this dude who's like clearly like getting
Comes
pegged,
out like,
like,
hey,
yeah, exactly, like this hairless, like fucking, you know,
hairless, just a lubed up bald,
Right,
like
just a
Keanu in the Matrix coming out of it, like
I wonder if
orifice
it's
lubed and ready.
I wonder if it's just one of those juxtapositions that caught that they're all obsessed with, because like over you could say in like a lot of American shit,
yeah,
they would think, why is the bad guy always the one that's completely right? Like, why does the bad guy have the purest motive or whatever? And over there, it's like, why is the bad guy always gay?
Yeah, I think that in this one, whenever you see Ieman for he's in his study the first time, you don't quite get the full scope of his gayness. But when he comes out into that stadium and he's got the mascara on and the heels and he's, you know, flouncing about, I was like, oh, God love you, Miike.
Mhm.
You came through. You came through. There's going to be a badass fighter who wants to fight Musashi, but the actual bad dude is gay. All right, let's go. And by the way, that was one of the biggest Miike-isms of the show. So whenever, and I knew when I was watching it that this was going to throw people for a loop. So Ieman wants to kill all samurai because in his conception, samurai are dogs and he's looking for wolves. So he wants to kind of cull the herd in a sense in order to find real samurai. He also locates a gold mine that these villagers are protecting, acquisitions it, kills everybody, turns them into his demon zombie slaves, and is just generally, you know, kind of a bad dude. So he comes out and he gives his whole evil villain speech about how Musashi should join him and they can be demons who rule the world together. They can take on the West. They can keep this infiltration of outsiders out. And then he tells his assistant, who is a lifelong rival of Musashi's, to cut the dude's arms and legs off so that he can be more amenable to his motives, basically. And the guy goes, ugh, you're boring me, basically, and cuts off the main bad guy's arms and legs. And what we get for the next few episodes is like this dude, this amputee wriggling on the floor, trying to get back to his lab. And then once that happens, he meets up with another character who tells him that he's going to save him, then doesn't and poisons him. And then he pisses himself and you see the piss, you know, dripping off the table. And I was like, that is Miike. The amputee and the piss, that's where we get him.
That's definitely
like,
it's definitely Miike's that's definitely a Miike aesthetic, if you want to call it one. But I thought it was interesting because like from my understanding for the plot heads out there, like Iman was sent there by the shogun, right? Because they discovered gold, and anything within that territory they claim. So he sent him to investigate, but he didn't come back, right? So then, because Iman is the most skilled of his samurai, he sends the guy who taught him, but they also hire the fucking Musashi, right? Because he's a skilled swordsman, and he leads him with Iman's, I guess, other samurai comrades to this village to find out what the fuck happened, to find out what the fuck's going on. But at some point, and again, it doesn't really matter, but at some point, Musashi realizes that he's dealing with fucking demons, right? Genma. So that's why he goes to get the Oni gauntlet, right? Because he knows like he's gonna need it in order to defeat Iman and whatever the fuck's going on down here in this village. And it's just very interesting, like how like it's a very, and we never see we never see the shogun, the guy who fucking orchestrated this whole thing to send this party to find him. We never see that. I love that. I feel like that is a very Miike thing to do. That's a very like why who gives a fuck? Like that's not the point. The point of the story isn't to like who sent them. You know what I mean? There's enough conflict already inherent that all we care about is Musashi and sort of this ultimate like showdown with Iman that ultimately doesn't even happen because like you said, David, he gets his fucking arms chopped off by the guy that he resurrected, who is I guess Musashi's greatest foe. Like even it says like, yo, like you were my closest equal. I defeated you because Musashi's like a G, like he's done killed like everybody. You know what I'm saying? Like he's just like the old.
He walks around with his arms in his robe. He's all like, right? "Oh, I'm sleepy
scared. He's
tired.
Scared of heights, low key. Like, he doesn't want to cross.
But he's also just like a fucking badass.
Yeah. I just loved the sensibility of the series. You know what I mean? Like because it's doing things that like you just don't see in Western shit. Because that's like you can't do that. Like you're not allowed to fucking like set up this showdown with this bad guy, then have him completely like incapacitated and his limbs cut off.
and him and his rivals showdown doesn't have a payoff either.
I know, like you think that they're gonna have, and it doesn't even show you that. It just kind of shows them jumping towards each other, and then
that was
over.
Ballsy. That was ballsy, especially for being an anime. But like. That's where it decided to go a little bit sentimental, like lean into more of the story because it's kind of like what happens here, and it's just like I don't know. It lets you sit with the emotional like vibe of the moment versus the like visual spectacle of it. And that I thought that was great when he takes.
I would have liked to see him kill him with the ore paddle though. That would have been sick.
That would have been tight.
I also respect that the decapitation scene with the fucking little girl and the fucking that shit was brutal. I don't even want to say it completely because I think people should watch the series and shit. But there's a memorable decapitation.
And when she's holding the heads.
That shit was like I was like, yeah, wow, they went there. Because you can, like you don't know. You think like this is still on Netflix. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and
Musashi is like, he's like, I'm sorry I did that. I'm an Oni, right? I'm possessed by this. And then she comes back to him and she says, you did that because you're human.
Right. I
was like, damn. And that's what the whole series is about. That's like when it stops being about good guy versus bad guy, who wins and who loses. It becomes about something different. And people don't get that. Like subversion isn't just a tactic to surprise your audience. It's very particularly turning your attention away from this manufactured 3-act structure that you're used to following and saying, hey, why don't we look at this instead? And it very much becomes about what being a human means. And you retroactively, you see that through the whole show, like who's a traitor, who's not, what's their relationship to animals? You know, one guy spends his whole life looking at medicines that'll cure people. One spends his whole life looking at medicines that'll kill people. Like these different elements of humanity. Miike slows down, takes a breath, and he looks at each one of them before they eventually die in combat or whatever. And I thought that it had a real, like, all of his filmmaking to me gets noted for how gory it is, how rapey it is, you know, all the sensational aspects that people talk about with Miike. But for me, he's always had a real kind of koan aspect to how he makes his movies. And people don't talk a lot about how sometimes punishingly slow his movies can be.
His people don't give him credit for his diversity, like in terms of like his as output, because he's made so much shit. But the ones that get the most sort of the ones that get talked about the most are the ones that are like the hyper violent, hyper graphic. So like he gets that stigma like with all of his shit when he's like got a lot of different movies, you know what I mean? Like a lot of different fucking movies. He shows a range as a filmmaker that's very like, it's fucking vast. It's not like he just does this one thing. It's just that when he does do that one thing, it's so fucking memorable that it sticks in people's minds. And in Miike's defense, Dave, you're saying like it's rapey. I'm like, let's be real. Like I watch a lot of Japanese shit. The majority of Japanese shit is rapey, dog. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like it's a real thing.
Oh,
like,
I don't have a problem with it. I'm just saying that that's what people talk about.
Yeah, no,
By the
I know
way,
you don't.
One of the movies that I really hope one day gets translated, it was just before his pop off 1998 period. I think it was like 95, 96. But it's a movie called Peanuts. And it's just about homeless people in Tokyo. Still has not been translated. But as soon as that does, we're doing an episode on it, because I want to see how a young Miike makes this kind of goopy, The Blind Side, sentimental movie about homeless people, like what he does with that. That to me is very interesting.
Well, he's got that movie Shangri-La. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen
that's
that.
Also that's about homeless people. But it's like a comedy. That'd be an interesting one to talk about. But it's also a little bit different. You know, it's got the Miike-isms in it, but it's a little different. And it's in that same vein, in that same world. But I just think it's fucking interesting that like certain criticisms about Miike kind of apply to like a lot of Japanese shit. That's something I've been thinking about a lot, where I'm like, I don't know. I just find it fascinating. I find it interesting. Have you guys heard of this movie called it's called Hyper Villain or Super Villain? And basically it's like a mockumentary. It starts out like a found footage movie, kind of. It's like this guy who's a rapist and he's like recording his rapes and like, and he's like, I'm going to record. And he's like sending this to like people to see. And then a fucking crew decides to follow him, like, and record. It's kind of like Man Bites Dog. And like, as he plans his next rape, and then he makes them like complicit in the rape. Like, he's like, this is the girl I'm going to rape next. And like, and it's like super fucked up, but it's a Japanese, it's not a Miike movie, but that's what I'm saying. Like the Japanese have this weird obsession with like, and again, I always say this because I say the same shit over and over again, but like, I do definitely think it ties into the honor culture that they have in Japan, but they have this obsession with like the defiling of women, like, you know what I'm saying? And they're sort of like their purity or the sort of the idea of what that even is. You know what I'm saying? You take a woman's honor from her. Like, I see it across so much of the fucking Japanese cinema. Like, so it's like, when people level that criticism at Miike, it's like, yeah, but like Miike is just doing what like Japanese cinema does. Like, you know what I mean? Like, whether you may have an issue with that or not, but that's like, that's not something that you could say solely lies on as Miike as a filmmaker, as a person, even, you know what I'm saying? Not that it even matters, but you know what I mean? Like, but I do see that a lot. I see that a lot. I just see that a lot. It's like, oh, Miike, you know, for people that don't like Miike,
and it also there's another level to it too with rape in movies where how do I say this? A lot of people think rape is hot, and I don't just mean men.
I mean, pink movies literally have a whole subgenre of pink films that are that. Like,
and it's not just men who like that.
It's like
right?
rape fantasy. Like the whole movie's a rape fantasy. Like, and it's like, you know what I mean? Like there's dozens, not even dozens, like it's hundreds, maybe thousands.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just all, it's that. It's like the whole movie is like some woman getting raped until she starts to like it. Because part of the rules that the Japanese censorship had was that like you can show a rape, but you can only depict a rape if it turns into a consensual thing. Like, because I watched this documentary called Pink Ribbon about pink films, and that's what they talked about. They talked to all these like Kiyoshi Kurosawa, all these other like directors who got their start in the pink genre, right, making these pink movies. And they broke down like, you know, they get $27,000 to make these movies, and it has to have a certain amount of sex scenes every 10 minutes. And like the way they got around the censors, you know what I mean? Like, because Japanese censors, like you can't show like certain, you know, obviously they blur out the body parts. For a while, you couldn't show butt crack. So, but then you could. So then they were doing that. But then like you could do a rape, but the rape has to like at some point she has to start enjoying it so that can get by the censor. It's these weird, very specific things where you're like, what the fuck? How is this passable? And it's weird because the way that they make it, it makes it even worse. Like you know what I mean? Like weirdly enough, like when you watch these movies, I'm like, that's better. You know what I mean? It's just, it's the shit is this. It's a Miike. You can't divorce Miike. When you talk about Miike, you can't divorce him from Japan, and sort of like the way that whole industry, like how he came up in that industry and how that whole ecosystem continues to exist. You know what I mean? Like he's a product of that. You know what I mean? Like, and sort of like his obsessions, you can't divorce his obsessions from that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he's got a lot to say about Japan, but he also has a lot to say because he's like half Korean. And like, you know, and like,
no, he's all Korean, actually.
Is he all Korean? Is he all Korean? That's what, okay.
Yeah, I just his parents are immigrants. Yeah.
That's what I was figuring. I knew there was something there. Like either he was one of his parents was Korean or they both Korean, but like in how Koreans were treated in Japan, even to this day, like he's Japanese, but he's also Korean. Like, and there's that whole dynamic. And like, there's a movie Go. I don't know if you guys have seen that movie. It's a Japanese movie about like how Koreans are treated in Japan. It's really fucking like, and that's also
it's rough, dude.
It's also it gives you another insight into who Miike is, like, you know what I mean? Like, so there's all kinds of shit going on over there that we as Americans, like, we don't have a full grasp of, you know what I mean? Like, so like when we see it, it seems so like, what the fuck? Like, and yeah, I just think that like,
and I think Americans too think like Korean, Japanese, what's the difference? Oh, there's a difference.
Oh, I mean, let me tell you, my nigga.
they both make great films. I tell you that.
They do.
Sure.
They do.
Yeah. The Handmaiden has a lot of good 101 Korean Japanese relationship in it. That's a good movie that has a little bit of that. Also has a little bit of their perverted shit with the
what was his newest
porn.
one? Like the limits of perception. Was that what was the one with the?
Yeah, I watched that. It looks like it's basically like an expensive iPhone commercial.
It's the Park Chan-wook one with the girl who she buries herself.
Something for I know. It's
Decision to Leave.
Decision to leave.
Thank you.
I liked it.
Yeah.
Very Hitchcock.
Limits of Perception was the Jarmusch movie.
Yeah.
But no, she's Korean in that movie, right? Or no, she's one of them's Japanese or something.
One of them's Japanese, one of them's Korean. Yeah. But there's a lot of history there between, you know, because Japan used to occupy them at one point.
Brutal shit too. Like Japanese people, when we're talking about histories of war crimes and brutality, Japan cannot be left off the rogues gallery of some of the countries that have done it the worst. But hey, they make anime, so that's cool.
I mean, we live in America. We can't say shit about that. So
I think you know what's really interesting about that is you're right. You're right. But when it comes to having an isolated ethno-nationalist state, Japan might be undefeated in terms of wiping otherness from its. I mean, that's what we're talking with Nobunaga and the three unifying emperors, you know, like what a lot of Japanese people are arguing about, like who's better and who's not. It has everything to do with their willingness to, because again, Nobunaga was the one who was more sort of pliable to Western interests, I guess. And now he's a demon forever. But Ieyasu, or whatever that Tokugawa Ieyasu, sorry everybody for getting that wrong, but the guy who was the silence dude, who was like burying Christian monks head down and letting, you know, ants eat their faces and shit, they're like, that was the good one. That was the, he, you know, he's pushing them out. So it's kind of like,
in their defense though, like, you know, like you got to look at it from like they just geographically had a fucking advantage for so long because they were this isolated ass island that
with
they
the
could
sea.
do that. Yeah, it was hard.
No navy could cross that sea.
Right. And then it was easy for them to be like, when they decided to have like imperial ambitions, for them to go and occupy other, like, you know, Asian countries, whether it's China or Korea, you know what I mean? Like they were in a perfect position to sort of do that.
If Agitator was a podcast about German cinema and we were real Germanophiles, it would be a lot more problematic than the one we have, because we tend to remember the Japanese side of that, or I'm sorry, the German side of that.
Yeah.
And not so much like with Japanese, it's like, oh, they probably like Dragon Ball Z and, you know, whatever.
Well,
but if we were like, this is a podcast all about German cinema from 1910 up to the present, and how great it is.
The Leni Riefenstahl, fucking yeah. But I think like people give Japan a break because we drop nukes on them.
You know, absolutely, that's absolutely what it is.
Yeah, you know, that's what it is. It's like
because we did the actual worst thing.
Right. So it's like it just kind of canceled out. It's like, yeah, y'all were teamed up with Third Reich, but like we did like nuke Hiroshima and Nagasaki, like that, which we know was fucked up. So like it's one of those things where it was like, like
our bad.
It's like, yeah, well, I guess we got to leave y'all alone. We can't be too hard on y'all. You know what I mean? Like,
all the weird shit that crawls out of the fallout from that. I said something in the Discord recently where just everything is fallout in Japan. Everything they've created is technically fallout. And I believe that. And I love them for it. My favorite people.
I tried to, and I might,
especially the racist part.
Yeah, our next logo is gonna have the rising sun background.
That would be tight, yo.
just have Mishima on it. Just Mishima is our logo.
Shout out to Mishima, GOAT. Great books. Yeah,
fantastic writer. One of their best writers, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's another whole other thing. Yeah, they got a wild history, man. Like their history is fucking fascinating. And they're a lot older of a society too. So you got to, you know, there's a lot more there. So it's a lot more of a more ancient culture. And, you know, America is very much a young culture, you know.
They really put the war in culture wars over the, like, so many like legitimate will burn down your fucking mountain because we want to modernize and you don't. We want electricity and you want to just drink from a bowl. And so we are mortal enemies now.
I mean, just think of the concept of a samurai, dog. Like, just think of it.
So tight. It's so, so much. Like the samurai, Ronin, ninja. And I was thinking about that watching this show. I always think about this whenever I watch any Japanese production that's based in this period. I know a lot of them take place with the introduction of guns, but from 1183, which is when the samurai period really kicked off and is what made a lot of people hate samurai. All the bad shit aside, you had dudes just wandering the countryside with swords, and you had to be fucking about that life. You had to stand on business. If like you came up on somebody who had another sword and you're like, wait, who are your loyalties to? And they were like, I'm loyal to blah, blah, blah. And you're like, well, we have to fucking fight to the death now. And you lived or died based on how nice you were with that sword. I'm sorry, dude, that's just tight. That's just fucking cool.
Yeah, it's definitely
like right now, I would, if that was the way that life was now, I would definitely be like the guy with a backhoe, in a field, like, fuck him up, Sasuke. I got you. I got your back. And then whoever won, I'd be like, I don't know who said that. That wasn't me. But ideally, conceptually, it's just a cool way of living.
Yeah, it's really like it's what like American Westerns sort of like the way they fetishize the gunfighter. Yep. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's sort of the similar deal with sort of the Japanese fetishization of the samurai, which is like this badass who walks around with a sword and like, it's like you challenge another motherfucker to the death. You know what I mean? Yep. America, of course, we did it with our shit is like, oh, we got guns. You know what I mean? Like it's full of gun. Like, you know what I mean?
The whole history of America is that scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark where he pulls the gun out on the turban dude. That's us. We're just like, oh, we have a gun, so whatever. But like, yeah, that whole idea and like the honor shit really appeals to me too, of just having these principles and not straying from them, even when it doesn't make sense. You're completely surrounded and someone's like, hey, if you just come join me, you'll be okay. I won't kill you. And you just say, you know what? I'm not going to join you and you're not going to kill me. I'm going to fucking cut my guts out.
Like, I'm going to take out this Tonto blade.
Well, people don't realize that like most of the American Westerns were based on the samurai movies anyway. Like, you know what I mean? So like a lot of American directors, John Ford and all, they were like watching these fucking old samurai movies and like ripping them off. I mean, like, honestly, Yojimbo was, that's what.
Yojimbo's the one where they invented the blood spray by accident in that movie, right?
But to
was
be fair,
Yojimbo?
Yeah, but to be fair, Kurosawa was adapting Red Harvest, which is Dashiell Hammett. Like, so I mean,
this is Agitator. How many levels deep are we?
Yeah.
How many levels deep is like Mercy or Dying World? Like, I don't know. It's based off of things that are based off of but I think it was Yojimbo where the squib that they had, like the hose broke. And when I think it was Mifune actually like cuts the dude, just all this blood just gushes out. And they were like, you know what?
Keep that.
Yeah. Yeah. That was fucking that was like a dope fucking like moment in like cinema history at that point. Like, you know what I'm saying? Because like how the arterial blood spray has been a thing since like that. Like I can't get enough of it. Miike obviously loves it.
Oh yeah.
All the fucking like Japanese filmmakers who I dig fuck with it. I mean, shit, American filmmakers. I mean, Tarantino does it all day. Like, you know what I mean? Like, arterial blood spray has just become a normal thing now. But you're right. Like, that was like Yojimbo was like a fucking if you want to call
it was an
it
accident. Happy accident.
It's
a happy accident. Kelby, what Miike-isms did you notice in Onimusha?
With white dude, they got one, his name is Alfred. So a Miike-ism, anytime there's some kind of like American shit referenced or whatever, it'll be the most basic bitch shit. You have a butler, his name is Alfred because that's the American butler name. And
there's butler. An American president, his name is Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah. What else? There was
the face dissect, like when they slice the face.
The face like, dissections.
Yeah.
The facial trauma in general. Whenever which is in a lot of Miike shit, like fucked up faces and shit. Whenever Kaizen sacrifices himself to save Sayo from the burning hut thing, he gets these like terrible like third-degree burns all over his face and shit. He turns into Two-Face for a little bit before he
seemed
dies.
Like a Grave of the Fireflies reference too, actually. Like Kaizen laying all burned and shit. Have y'all seen that movie?
Grave
of
the
Fireflies?
Yeah.
That probably definitely was a direct reference. I'm thinking like Kaizen, I like the Kaizen character. His death was kind of like I knew that he was gonna die the moment that he was like, basically like saying more or less that like I'm just here for the to make sure the gauntlet is returned back. Fuck the girl. I was like, oh, he about to die, bro. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I already knew it in my
I
brain.
thought he was about to get some magical powers when he was pushing that burning belt. Because the bad guys put the girl. By the way, there's of course, the obligatory innocent girl character who becomes one day.
She's their leader.
Really want. Yeah, she's their leader. One day I really want people to break from that. That's a trope I don't love. But
oh, bro, I love the little girl.
Man, she wasn't their leader. That's like the way that you like, when they put the retarded kid on the basketball court.
Oh, you got the big boy pants on,
right? Yeah, like everybody gets out of the way so he can shoot. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the same kind of shit. They're like,
I like how they all play along with it.
Yeah, they like, you know what I mean? She's the leader. Even she's our leader, but she's not. Like, come on. Like, come on.
They trap her in a burning bell, one of those big ass bells you find in Buddhist temples. And she's in the center of it, and they let it on fire, and she has to be saved. Mm-hmm. So Kaizen, the monk who came along, and for a while is kind of it's really interesting because there's a thing that happens in books and movies where you have a character who is the stand-in for the audience, who doesn't know anything that's going on, doesn't know any of the people. And so Kaizen's kind of there to be that character for the audience. Yeah. Episode 4, he decides to push the bell over and it burns the fuck out of him. And Miike basically kills your proxy in the show, right? Like, this is you're dead.
He just killed Brad Pitt in 7.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. He just killed Krillin from Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah.
His name started with a K. He's a bald head monk. I was like, he kept reminding me of Krillin. I actually liked, I did, you know what else we didn't comment on, no one has talked about yet that we haven't really touched on is the animation style. I actually, it kind of reminded me of like that fucking show Archer, but like mixed with like anime. Like, you know what I mean? Like it had this kind of weird, like
very computery.
Right. Very this weird marriage of like computer CGI with like hand drawing, mimicking hand drawing. Like I liked it. I thought it was interesting. It was an interesting
but like Archer is like on a fixed South Park scale of it looks like it was made in 5 seconds.
This is like a lot more detailed,
so many like when we've done this a bit in different talking about animated shit where I want to talk about like the camera angles. I don't know what you call it in animation, but this has crazy ass camera angles.
I mean, well, they do use a camera, like a mock camera when you make that shit in like the different sort of like 3D rendering apps. Like you'll have like a camera that they can change. So there's literally a camera that they use. It's
right.
A virtual one.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like they're literally making shots and framing shots within the sort of like the 3D, like whether it's, I don't know what they use, but like all of them have it. You know what I mean? Like I fucked around with it before. Like they all have that camera. So you're right. Like it is they're literally using cameras, just virtual cameras. For
right, like Halo 3, going back to video games, had that element where you could make your own, you could like record your own shit, create your own levels, and so you could switch between the different cameras to see different angles. Right. So it is that, and in this you have like where it'll start way up in the sky and follow a snowflake all the way down into the battle, and then you're spinning around the battle scene, and a lot of sort of 3D-esque shots of swords flying around, and I've fucked with the Archer design with like Attack on Titan fluidity. Who did this? Which anime is this? The same? Is this like the Chainsaw Man people? And
was it Sublime? I think it was
Subliminal.
Like Subliminal, something like that, right? It wasn't the same because the guys, I think it was Subliminal
Jihad.
Subliminal Saw did it. No, like I think it was some company like that called Sublime, something like that. That did the animation.
Sublimation.
Sublimation. There you go. That's what it was. Sublimation did that. I liked it. I thought it was dope. I even liked when fucking Musashi became like an Oni, and like he looked like the cover of Future's Dirty Sprite 2. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like he looked like he was just like, this was like a lean demon or some shit. Like, yeah, fucking purple, fucking this weird looking. Like, yeah, it was just fucking, I thought that was pretty cool. Like, I liked the way that they played with the style. And when they introduced a new kind of style into it, it always like made it more visually interesting than sort of like your kind of typical anime shit that I see. I mean, that I watch at least. So I fucked with the animation style in this for sure. At parts, I even thought it was like almost like what do you call it? Rotoscope. You know, at certain moments, I thought it was some rotoscope shit. But it clearly they weren't rotoscoping Toshihiro Infume. He's been dead for years. Like, you know what I mean? So like, I don't know. Like, yeah, it'd be interesting to like really see how they went about doing that. Because it's definitely unique.
They're a fairly new studio too, apparently. From what I see, there was only like 5 titles I found in my 10 seconds of research that I just did.
What did they do?
They did this thing called Walking Dog Meat, which just the title alone. Oh no, I mixed up 2 different titles. Never mind. There's one called Walking Meat and there's one called Dragon's Dogma.
Walking Dog Meat.
Walking Dog Meat.
Somebody write that.
I think that's Walking Dog Meat.
That sounds like a David James Keaton joint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could pull that off.
I do think I do think. Sorry, go ahead, David.
No, I got nothing. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I do think it's interesting to go back to sort of like the execution of an idea and like looking at something like this, and then sort of comparing it to sort of the things that we see over here specifically, because like I don't know, like we see certain things sort of like Miike's good about this. I feel like artists that you tend to like, or at least I think that we tend to fuck with, are pretty good about this, of like reappropriating something, whether it's an IP, you know, a pre-existing intellectual property or whatever, or just an idea from a pre-existing, you know, IP, and making it our own. You know what I mean? And like I feel like with Onimusha, it was like, okay, they had the license, the literal license to do it, and he just took it and made their own thing out of it, right? Like fuck it, like throw it to the side. But when I look at, like, for example, like I just found out today that like Robert Rodriguez has a new movie with Ben Affleck, which is basically like his ripoff of Cure. Like, so it's like Cure, but like if it sucked. You know what I'm saying? And like, and I like Robert Rodriguez. Like, I have a soft spot for him because like I grew up like loving like El Mariachi, Desperado, and even when he makes dumb movies, I do feel like there's something to like. There's still some fun. There's some funness to it. Like as a creator,
Machete. Machete
as a creator, like I just feel like even when he misses, there's something admirable about his.
Have you guys ever had your dad catch you beating off?
No.
My dad did one time, and it was to the Desperado. Salma Hayek sex scene.
Yeah, you gotta.
Like I thought the whole house. I thought I had the whole house to myself, and I had my VHS. So I'd recorded it, and I was like rewinding it, and then beating, and then rewinding, and then beating. And then I hear the door go, and like Dad walked in. I was like, oh, and you know. He played it cool. He knew the guy code. He just like walked away. He's like, no, didn't see anything. Anyway, continue.
that was cool of him. But yeah, like I look at that, like I look at like something like that. It's called Hypnotic too, by the way. But it's like it's basically Cure. Like You look at, you watch a trailer, like this is Cure with Ben Affleck if it was like bad, like you know. And I haven't watched it, so maybe it's fun. I don't know. But
Man, Ben Affleck ain't Mexican. What
right,
is like
right. I don't know, but you know, it's Robert Rodriguez, so you know he's not Mexican either, even though he is. Shout out to Robert.
Wait, hold on. Run it back.
I mean, I know Alvaro. Shout out to him. I know that he's his cousin, and he wrote Machete, the first one, and I know him, but like I make that joke like Robert's not Mexican. I mean, he's clearly Mexican. He's got like a million kids, and like you know, he's from Texas. Like.
he's clearly Mexican. He wears boots and he's got a million.
He's Mexican as fuck, but you know, like, but he's almost kind of not like.
He's got the hat, and he's got a bunch of kids, and you know.
Yeah, you know all the stereotypes. No, but like he used to go to like when he made El Mariachi and he went to Mexico to shoot it. Like I think like he couldn't speak Spanish for real. Like, and they looked at him like a gringo. Like, you know what I'm saying? That's why I say when I say like, oh, he's like a Mexican, but he's like, but like to actual Mexicans, they looking at him like probably like, I mean, you are Mexican, but you're, you know, like you're kind of like a gringo to us, you know, not to us, but to them. So yeah, and then I look at something like that, but then I look at like the books too. Like, you know, for example, like that book that Eric LaRocca book that's like basically like Sluts, Dennis Cooper's The Sluts if it was bad, like that kind of shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, like
the one.
Shout out to Eric
LaRocca. I'm so glad some we got shots fired.
I just say that because I see a lot of that where you see a lot of like people taking ideas and like making their own like version of it over here, or you know, and then like there's good ways to do it and there's bad ways to do it. But I feel like the industry standard is to do it. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm pointing to two recent things like that Eric LaRocca book, which is successful, and this new Robert Rodriguez movie, which I don't know if it's doing well or not. It just came out. But the point is, like, you can point directly to real world examples of people saying, "Oh, this thing, but I'm doing it." Like, and like
The Departed,
right? The Departed is that it's Infernal Affairs, but it's like done in a way that's like better, like not better than Infernal Affairs. I fuck with Martin Scorsese, but I do think Infernal Affairs is better than The Departed.
Yeah,
but you know, but I'm just saying, like, I say all that to say, like, when I look at stuff that gets made now, that's already like based on another thing, even if it's not official, like I'm always thinking from the standpoint of like, okay, what did they do to it to make it their own? And this is a perfect example of something that, like, even though it was a video game before for sure, but like this could have been something completely different in the hands of different people. And because it's not what I feel like it would have been if it came through like Hollywood, like I think it's better for it because it doesn't it actually takes risk and actually attempts to make something that's made from a viewpoint with a voice, like, and I feel like most shit that gets filtered through the system over here is the whole thing is about like filtering the voice out, as you know what I'm saying, like to every level, like till it gets to its perfect product that is in, you know what I mean, like this idea of a perfect commercial product, you know what I mean.
Well, the
like,
very easy example would be in the Marvel movies that all have a different director to it, and
it doesn't matter who they are, right?
What,
right.
Really?
You got Kenneth Branagh to do this one,
right?
Right.
It's amazing that they could take a director with a fucking very unique perspective and very strong voice, and it's completely like once it gets through that, it could be anybody. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
bro, they ruined Cop Car, dude. I loved Cop Car.
Yeah,
I thought that was a great.
Yeah, you're right.
He immediately, like Spider-Man, he directed the worst Spider-Man movies of all time.
Which one did he do?
Mark
all
Webb,
of them.
right?
Homecoming.
Mark Webb. Mark Webb did the ones with homeboy from, Andrew Garfield. He did the newer ones are the dude from Cop Car, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the newer ones with the short dude that's dating Zendaya.
Tom Holland.
Yeah. Tom Holland ones are the guy who did Cop Car. Mark Webb, he did that other fucking 51, what is it, Summers or something, with the girl from New Girl.
50 Days of Summer.
500 Days.
500.
Yeah. So
40
that guy
days
Mark,
and 40 nights.
same shit, whatever.
The Sixth Sense.
But they do that. They'll snatch up a guy, a filmmaker who's made like one or two sort of like indie darlings, you know, the movies that do well on the festival circuit.
Did
They
that
get
with
them,
Greta Gerwig.
yeah, and then they'll like be like, okay, so now you do what we say, you know, and like get it,
Mhm.
because they've tried that with more established directors, and it like they have problems because they actually can be like, no, fuck you, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
even though the Shane Black Iron Man was actually a Shane Black movie.
Mhm.
And you could tell because Shane Black's been in the industry for a long time, he could probably threw his weight around a little bit. You know what I mean? It was like, I'm gonna do it this way. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's one of the rare Marvel movies that feels like it's from somebody. You know what I mean? As opposed to it feeling like anybody could have made this movie. Yeah, like so.
And I feel like Miike just doesn't know another way to be, because a lot of people don't know this, and Kelby and I are going to have to do a show on it soon. But he did the Yakuza movie, like the Yakuza video games. He did the movie Like a Dragon. And when you watch it, it's just a Miike movie, except at the end, the protagonist's fist glows blue and he starts punching people really hard. And you're like, what the fuck is this? But I like that attitude about the
So it's
whole
like
thing.
it's Dead Alive 4 then, right?
Basically, yeah. It's you're literally like, what the fuck just happened? He got dragon power at the end of the movie. But I like, and I think that there's a kind of autistic attitude that you can take towards making your own shit that maybe Miike has, where I'm just trying to put myself in the shoes of the suits who have to deal with him when he's making their movie. And I just feel like he would be this unwavering guy who's like, I don't know what you mean. You know, I don't know what you mean by I have to make this movie more this thing or that. Have you guys seen Terraformers?
I haven't watched that one, but yeah, I know
Speaking
about
of
it.
Robert Rodriguez, I think it's the Spy Kids of Miike's career.
Yeah, it is. And it's great. It's
all I
great.
know is I remember I actually have a copy of Terraformers, but like I just know they got those people with the fucking those bodies armor suits, those white body armor suits on it.
They
And
all
like,
turn into bugs. Everybody turns into bugs. It's really good. Rios loved it. We watched it together. And then I showed her the manga where all the roaches are very clearly black people. And she was like, "Oh, I don't know if I like this." I was like, "They don't do it in the movie. In the movie's fine."
There you go. Miike's
the movie's fine. The manga's better. You know.
the manga is more biblically accurate, and then
listen, as somebody who grew up like trying to defend Mr. Popo's existence, like
every
Right?
black kid, every black friend that I have has a story.
Mr. Popo is not. It's an alien.
He's he's an alien. He's not black. Like, he's an alien.
I mean, it's a racist alien, but
all the white people who are listening are like,
Google Mr. Popo right
dude. Now. Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah,
Google
Mr. Popo's an alien.
Sure.
Yeah, cool. I mean, another thing that's funny about Dragon Ball Z is like all the aliens like have like turbans and shit. Like that's another weird thing. Like, yeah. So Japanese
Piccolo is the
view others as alien.
But so just to get back to like, and this is what I think part of this show is my obsession with tie-in novels and IP and how some authors and filmmakers approach IP and others, seem to get sucked into this whole, like all the edges get sanded off and they become kind of tools for this thing. But, Brian Evanson wrote really good Dead Space novels and Alien and Halo, and Miike seemed, whatever property you give him, it always seems to be a Miike movie. And I think that there's a force of personality there, but I also think that it's a mindset thing too, where I've read so many interviews with this guy, and I've read all the Tom Mess books.
Mess books.
Shout out to Tom Mess. We haven't slandered you in like 100 episodes, so you can come on the show now if you want to.
Yo, fuck Tom Mess now.
And it seems to me that Miike, he doesn't think about any of the things that we've just been talking about. He just goes to make a movie. And I think that's why he's my hero and why he's the godfather of this show, because I do think that he's pure in his own way. His movies can be good, they can be bad, they can be excellent, they can be terrible. But my love for him as a filmmaker, which, you know, in this case, this was a good one, a really good one. But my love for him is that he seems to just be this immovable stone that passes through these industries that otherwise chew people up and remains completely unchanged. That's why I love him. He just keeps making the next thing.
Yeah, he's definitely. Go ahead, go.
And well, how going way back to when we brought up the Reddit haters saying it's like they just took an IP and attached it onto a pre-existing story they wanted to do. Duh, especially these days when that's like all you can do. Everybody, every time you hear anything coming out of Hollywood, especially, it's like we're thinking about, you know, buying up more. We're more interested in intellectual properties and like characters and I've been digging even deeper into behind the scenes and shit because Agitator Film's going to be a thing starting in 2024. I guess starting now, but like that people will actually see in 2024. But yeah, it's all this. We're more interested in intellectual property. It's like, okay, then are you the creator who's like, well, I really want to try my hand at doing the Spider-Man lore justice. Or are you like me who would love a chance at Spider-Man to make that fool from Houston and lean it the fuck up and like just totally I would do a one-off and just no multiverse shit and have to kill Spider-Man at the end too. But like it's do you just take the aesthetic of it and drape it over this thing that you want to do? Do you put your personality and voice like into this, just like we were saying, story plot? Who gives a fuck? Okay, so give me any story. Give Spider-Man, cool. I'm gonna do my H-Town hood rat thing to Spider-Man now. Mercy even has a bit of that in it. It's like, okay, The Road and Abraham and Isaac, but I do my H-Town hood rat thing to it a little bit, you know.
It's the Adam Lair crypto transgression idea.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I like that. I like that crypto transgression. I like that. It's interesting because what you're hitting on and what you guys kind of hit on a lot on Agitator is sort of navigating this path of like a commercial artist and like trying to find like there's always those ones. Miike to me is one of them ones where they have completely dedicated their careers to sort of existing as commercial artists, but they've kind of figured it out. Like they've kind of figured it out in a way. It's I compare him sort of to kind of like those guys who did like that era of those early pulp novelists, kind of like those, you know, like the John C. McDonald's and fucking, you know, those guys who write these, who would just bang out these books over and over and prolific. And they just sort of, and when you go back and you read them, they were like hitting all of the sort of, they were hitting all the marks that they were needed, right, for the sort of thing that they were producing. But they're so when you're looking at, there's so much shit that they're doing with inside those. They're coloring in the lines, but they're doing so much shit within it that's like, oh, you can do that. Oh, you can, like, you know what I mean? Like they can't help but be sort of they can't help but be themselves. Like David was saying, like it's Miike is still Miike, regardless of whatever he's put, whatever position you put him in, whatever property you allow him to helm, it's still going to come out Miike. Like, you know what I mean? Even if it's him adhering 100% to sort of whatever it is they need him, it's still going to be Miike's baked in, right? And I feel like there's the key to sort of like existing and keeping your sanity and actually making money doing sort of any kind of commercial art is to sort of find a way to produce at a certain clip and also sort of retain whatever uniqueness that makes you, which everyone has, you know what I'm saying? Like, but figuring out how to do that within the context of sort of the commercial arena.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I think that it just hit me that the way to do this is to pretend, say you're given an IP, right? I don't think any of the three of us are autistic, but pretend that you are. So you approach something, you've been hired by a studio to make Onimusha or Ant-Man or whatever, right? All the parts of your brain, those normal parts that tell you like, okay, this is what it's supposed to look, just turn all that shit off. Pretend for the duration of your stay as a hired gun for one of these studios that you can't tell the difference between the two things. All you know is that you've been given money and instructions. Here's your money, and the instructions are it has to have this character, it has to follow these plot points, and at one point, the character's hand has to get set on fire with like a blue flame. And without overthinking it, and without intellectualizing what you're doing and philosophizing and navel gazing, you go full retard mode. You're like, okay, I can do that. What I'm suggesting is a real embodiment from a non-autistic person of a kind of single-minded autism that can be really powerful if you can just shut certain parts of your brain off.
Yeah, go full retard.
Go full retard.
Yeah, I get it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I get it. It's interesting because it's just like, again, like I feel like the question for most people who are serious about sort of trying to make a living or trying to carve out some sort of existence as an artist in 2023 and moving forward, it's this weird sort of it's this weird question that you have of how do you maintain your integrity but also play ball enough to where you're able to continuously get work. And it's an interesting thing because like everyone's line is different, you know what I'm saying? Like and there used to be, the Gen Xers were good about this, right? The Gen Xers were really good about like talking about this idea of like what the sellout is and what a sellout isn't, you know what I mean? And like the generations that sort of came after, they sort of, as they don't really know what that means, you know what I mean? I don't even think, to be fair, I don't even think Gen Xers really knew, like, other than that they didn't want to be like their parents. You know what I'm saying? Like they didn't want to be like their parents. You know what I mean? Like they're like, I'm not gonna go into a suit and be in an office. And then they got older and they went and got a suit and went into an office. You know what I mean? But this idea of like selling out, and what that means to you as an individual and how you kind of need to figure that out for yourself is the ultimate question of anyone pursuing the paths that we are pursuing. You know what I'm saying? Like
you transcend it. You transcend the question of the sellout. You're outside of it. You're completely outside of it. Is he or isn't he? Well, it's kind of hard to say. And he takes everything that's thrown his way. I think that's something that's so fascinating about Miike. When you read interviews with him, he just gets approached by stuff and he goes, all right. Which is why for a period of time, he was just directing J-pop girl band music videos because it was work. Like, all right, I would like to see those now that I think about it.
That sounds 100% like me, honestly. Like
That's what I thought of. That's when I said transcendent. I thought of Kelby. Somebody whose personality and vision is so strong that it literally doesn't matter where the money is coming from. All that matters is that you have the money now. So you go do. I feel like it's the ideal place to be. I think that when you scale that up to a Marvel scale, because none of the three of us would be good as a Marvel movie director, and I think
I would storm off that set.
I couldn't coexist with Kevin Feige at all, dog.
It wouldn't work. But if somebody gave one of us the IP to Legends of the Hidden Temple, the Nickelodeon show, and said, go make a movie about it, that shit would slap. That shit would be good. You see that actually in the lower IPs.
That's what I want. I want that.
You want Nick or Treat. I feel like that's where you really see things start, because the Goosebumps movie was good. Jumanji was good. It's these like lesser IPs where directors can kind of play.
I agree. It's weird though, because it's like you're onto something, David, when you say this idea of like it transcending it and sort of like being kind of like not even sort of being willing to even accept the premise. You know what I mean? Like I'm not even accepting the premise of this idea that you guys are trying to like fit upon. I think there's something to that. I think there's something to having that kind of mindset when you're making shit in any sort of commercial capacity. But I do think that it's very interesting when you look at certain artists like Miike, or like, I don't know, like Chester Himes is somebody I'm a fan of. And I kind of look at like, he had these early novels that were kind of like got him a lot of praise. He was writing from prison, and then he finally got out of prison. And he moved to France. He started to do the Harlem Cycle. And these were books that he just basically did for money. But those are his most lauded works. And he didn't really feel much about them at all at the times that he was writing them. But later in life, he came to accept that, like, no, actually, these are my greatest. This is my greatest work. Like, you know what I mean? Like this fucking, these little dime store Harlem detective novels that set, you know what I mean? Like, these are my greatest contribution. And sort of like the fact that he was just doing them and just getting them out there, and just thinking, not even probably thinking less of them. No, I mean, he did think less of them. But maybe it's the fact that he was just working.
You know what Miike said when he was asked what Itchy the Killer was about? His response to that was, Kelby, do you know?
It's a love story.
A love story. He said it's a love story.
I mean, it is.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, it is.
Like,
it is.
But the reason why I bring that up is that it's on the same tip as the Chester Himes shit. He's telling a love story in the through the mechanism of Yamamoto's manga. He's like, I'm going to tell a love story here. And Himes was telling, whether he knew it or not, he was using this, I have money. They have to be these pulp, dime store novels or whatever. And the essence, the hymn of that thing seeped through. So Itchy the Killer's a love story. His Himes France dime novels are his best work. There's something to that where and I think this might be a huge agitator key, maybe the biggest one, if there is one. And it's pushing this kind of ubermensch, alpha male, this is my vision thing to the side. And by suppressing it a little bit and agreeing to work within some confines, you're actually giving it more space to move, right? Because if somebody just wrote you a blank check and said, Ryan, here's $1 million, go make a movie, it could go Heaven's Gate, right? Like it could go crazy. But if they were like, hey, we need you to make I I just saw it on my TV. So Blue Beetle, a Ryan Jackson Blue Beetle feature might be interesting. You know, if because that I'm working on some mystical shit right now. So if people aren't spiritual, whatever, that's cool, but that's where I'm at. But I really do think that it's like having gunpowder or gasoline or whatever. And when you are given sort of free reign, it's sort of like there's no container for that gas. And when you are when you just kind of step back again and transcend and you take your ego out of it, because I think that another thing that I really like about Miike and that I aspire to be more like is I feel like he's one of the least egotistical filmmakers you could come across. When you take all that, you just have somebody who has this life force and this creative brilliance, but no ego to like make the Takashi Miike movie. And so instead, it's whatever container, the yin and the yang, the material numbers on a spreadsheet, kind of like, here's what we have to make. He pours it into that kind of stuff. And what you get is Onimusha or Blade of the Immortal or Yakuza or Terraformers or Japanese girl group music videos. Less enthused about that. But I feel like, I don't know. This episode is great because I feel like I've come the closest to articulating it, but there's something there. There's an ideal balance between those two.
I'm doing that in practice right now for the first time, actually, where I've done, obviously written and sold my own shit. I've been a editor for hire, a designer for hire, whatever, but like I'm writing a biography and got a column pitch accepted for Hussy magazine. So I'm writing about interviewing, niche fetishes of men from different backgrounds on one hand, and on the other, I'm writing the biography of a Mexican mafia member turned minister. And so I'm restricted by this like
It's
Christian
not
testimonial.
it's not that dude that be like, Jesus Christ.
No, 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 no. No. This is a dude I actually came up with.
Okay.
Not
Okay.
came up, he's older. He's, older than me, but like
Mhm.
um no, I've known him like since I was a child and just ran into him and he goes, "You right." I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "I've got a story nobody will pick." Because Christian, like a lot of Christian authors he's approached about his story won't do it because it's so dark.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was like, this sounds tight. Plus, I like a child, like, okay, I'm restricted from doing whatever the fuck I want because one, it's this story, it's a real life story, and two,
Mhm.
it is like edgier and it's forward. He's already got prisons pre-ordering it and shit like that. So
Mhm.
it's like, but it is like a Christian thing.
Right.
So I'm restricted in things, but like that's I don't know. I like uh it is like what David said about having a container for the gas. It's like, ooh, I can cook some shit up here. Like I can work in this kitchen. Like,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like, I don't know, bro. Like it's weird because it's like one of those things where you kind of like need to have built-in limitations. Weirdly enough, as it's so weird that like I hate limitations, but like I've grown to accept them and I actually grown to like kind of like appreciate them. Uh because you're right, there's something about knowing where the sort of guardrails are that keeps you on pace, that keeps you on the path. When there's none, the tendency to roam is very, I can go
Mm-hmm.
anywhere. And that can easily turn into some shit that's like spirals out of control. You know what I mean? Like it's very easy to go like, oh, I'm gonna go this way, I'm gonna go that way, I'm gonna, and next thing you know, you're like, okay, I just made a universe. Like, what the fuck is this? Like, George R. R. Martin's next fucking, like fantasy world building kind of thing, even though it's not a fantasy. Like you can easily go down that path. Sometimes when you have when it's like just limitless, when there's no sort of limitations placed on you. It forces you to be creative because it puts your back against the wall, right? It's like writing, and I know David, you don't outline, right? So like, I think Kelby, you don't either. I don't outline, but this like they always say of like just kind of writing yourself into a corner and figuring how to get the fuck out. Like that challenge actually always produces the best shit for me and for the people. It tends to, at least I tend to believe this. I tend to believe like that's kind of like the way. You know what I'm saying? The way is to go where you're like, oh shit. Like, like if you're just writing and then like it's all like there's no walls you're hitting, you know what I mean? In terms of like, okay, what do I do next? Then you're probably making some weak mid-ass shit at best.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yes. Yeah.
because it's like, what the fuck? Like if you know, then chances are the people reading it know. You know what I mean?
No,
Like,
writing is all alchemy. However
yeah,
you feel when you
Mhm.
write, what you write is how your reader feels. Doesn't
Right.
matter what you do. But I will say that recently I've become obsessed with things like craft and plot.
Mm.
I did an episode with Glenn and Banjo Jack for State of Fear.
Mm.
So I got back on my Michael Crichton tip and how he plotted things and
Oh,
how he was such a good
Michael
plotter.
Crichton is the most plotter of the plot. You know what I mean?
He's the
yeah.
plottiest plotter
He
that
be
ever
plotting
plotted.
for real.
And
yeah.
but I'm fascinated by that because
Mm.
even though I haven't quite on this show been able to articulate it yet, I have this hunch or inkling that whichever way you skew on the spectrum,
Mm.
plotter, dead
Pantser.
prose, whatever,
Yeah,
and then you go
pants.
over, you go over to the other side. You're a pantser. You're David Lynch making, just get 70 index cards and then you have a movie. Whichever side you're on, it behooves you to try to go the other way. It's just balance. It's yin yang, fucking balance of the universe type shit. And so whatever you don't do, you should try to do the other thing. And you're gonna see. I mean, Kelby's read War in Heaven. That was my first attempt at having a plot. I don't know if I succeeded in having a plot, but it's a good book. So
It's a really good example of that, taking somebody who doesn't give a fuck about that shit, trying to give a fuck about that shit, and also what we're talking about and being that middle ground of commercial. I think War in Heaven is the perfect like step in that direction. It is a step in that direction for sure. A solid step where it's like, oh, no personality lost, no compromise, but this feels more commercially viable.
I
100%.
thank you. I think that I appreciate that. I think that Miike would be, if he was American, he would be David Lynch, right? If he was just given free reign, if you gave Miike the money to say like go make a Miike movie, it would look very similar to Lynch movies. And you do have examples of that in his filmography, where like Ezo. I think Ezo, 2004's Ezo, was like right after his 98 through 2021 just period of brilliance. He made everything from 98 to 2021. Itchy,
2001.
Audition. You're right. Yep. Sorry. Yeah. 2001. Itchy, Audition, Dead or Alive, everything. And then 2004 rolls around. They gave him money and they said, make a movie. And he made Ezo. And it slaps. Go check out the Ezo episode if you want to know more about that. It's awesome. But it's also, you can't make 20 Ezos. You can make one, right? He needed that energy to go back into a property after that. And I think right after Izo. I think it was 2005 or 6 that you get One Missed Call, Yakuza. Like he's back to IP genre type stuff. So for every 20, you get one of those. Izo is great though. I'm not hating
It
on
is.
Izo.
It is. But yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Because even with Lynch, um, Lynch for me is somebody who I think he gets an unnecessary amount of hate from people who just like to have a hot take about him.
Mhm.
Because there's a lot of artists who want to be like, Lynch ain't shit. But he's somebody who I can't just have oh yeah, Lynch. Let's watch another Lynch and another Lynch. It's like he's
Mhm.
like a holiday.
Right.
His shit, I know. I mean, I don't know exactly what I'm gonna get if I've never seen it before, but I know what I'm getting into,
Mm.
and I can come back to that later. Mike
Mhm.
is individually somebody who can take on any skin at all, and
Mhm.
you're gonna get Mike, but there's
Yeah.
never been a Lynch that wore a different skin, other than
Dune.
Lynch.
Well, there's
Dune,
Dune.
I guess,
Dune
which
did.
he
Um,
disowns, so
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
if it
yeah,
even
yeah.
counts
Well,
that much.
there's, Lynch is a great example because Mulholland Drive is my favorite Lynch movie, and then Inland Empire, and then actually no, it goes Mulholland Drive, The Return, and then Inland Empire. Those are my top three, right?
Blue
But
Velvet all the way. Blue Velvet.
Blue
Blue
Velvet
Velvet, right?
slaps.
Like
I
so
love
that
Lost
Yeah,
Highway is my
yeah,
favorite.
yeah.
Wild at Heart is great too. Oh, and Lost Highway. That's a good point. But
Mhm.
check it out. So Lost Highway is your favorite. Lost Highway was written by Barry Gifford, and Twin Peaks is written mostly by Mark Frost. And so Lynch is a person who has this duality that we don't often acknowledge, where we think of him as this singular, iconic filmmaker, but his best work for the most part, besides Inland Empire, which is just him. That's his Ezo, right? Ezo, Inland Empire. That's the same kind of thing. He has this anchor who's bringing him back, right? Because Gifford, who wrote Wild at Heart and Lost Highway, he's so fucking good. But he's the guy who's pulling him back. Basically, Mark Frost is pulling him back. In Dune, he's being pulled back, which I loved it. I think his Dune is great.
It is
But
better
yeah,
than Denis Vanilla Bomberish.
I didn't watch it, so I can't comment. I didn't.
Yeah,
I saw it had throat singing, and I thought that was tight, but I can't. I didn't
I
see it,
mean,
so I can't
I
comment.
will say this: the new Dune feels big. You know what I'm saying? In a way that
Uh,
like it just feels like, oh, this is like a movie. It feels like that. I mean, there's it's kind of forgettable though, like
mhm,
uh in a way, because like I remember watching and being sort of impressed with the scale, but then I also was like I forgot about it. Like you know what I mean
mhm,
afterwards.
mhm.
So it doesn't have that staying power. Like say even if you don't like the Lynch movie, you kind of remember it. You know what I mean in a weird way,
Yep,
regardless.
yep.
But I feel like it's interesting that you would think that like if Mike was over here, he'd be a Lynch, and I'm wondering if that would be true because like Mike's whole approach is so workmanlike, and
Mhm,
Lynch is operating 100% from like an artist. I think like when I think of Lynch, the only comparison I can think of is somebody like Hodorowski or somebody. You know what I'm
mhm,
saying? Where it's like
mhm,
these guys are making like they're coming from this like very art house kind of
mhm,
headspace, and they're making these movies, and you see it. Both of them have had attempts at making more mainstream things, but the moment that they got the range to do that and they did it, they immediately rejected it and went back. Mika is
mhm,
just like, dog, like I just want to work. I'm gonna work, and then he just so happened to be an artist. You know what I mean?
mhm,
Like,
mhm,
and not
mhm,
only that, like by the fact that he did so many films, like he's honing his craft. So it's like there's no way he can't make a movie after he's made hundreds of them. He's made so
mhm,
much more movies than the most people. You know what I mean? That it's like no, he could probably make a movie in his sleep. Like you know what I mean? Like, and it's like it's
mhm,
gonna be good to a certain degree because he's just that more seasoned than anyone. You know what I mean? Because
Mhm.
there's a
Correct.
there's a finite amount of people who've made movies at that degree in the modern age. Like, you know what I mean? Like you can count those guys probably on one hand. He's one of them. You know what I mean? Like
Roger
no one's,
Corman is another
yeah,
one.
yeah, you know what I mean? Like you could, there's not in America for sure. There's not. But again, you got to remember this too. Like Japan has no unions. Like there's none. So there's a totally different kind of there's totally different kind of emphasis on like it makes more sense for someone like Miike to do that over there because like you got to think about it with no unions. Not only do you doesn't have to worry about those regulations, but also like because there's no unions, the pay scale is very different. So it's like it makes more sense for him probably financially to do a bunch of movies because it's like he's not going to get like union guarantees, you know what I'm saying, as a director because there is no unions. Like they have zero. So it's like whatever they're going to pay him is whatever they're going to pay him, whatever he negotiates. So probably he's going to do 25 films, you know what I mean? In like a span of like 2-3 years
I
because
would forever argue that greater benefits society too, because
I mean,
like I can't live off doing one kitchen remodel. I have to do as many as I fucking can, cram
right.
into a year, you know?
But it's also one of those things where it's like, while for him it works, it's not scalable for everyone else. So that's the problem. You know what I'm saying? Where it's like you wish there was some guardrails built into the Japanese system that would make it have a system. Because right now the Japanese film industry is kind of like they view it as dead. Like, you know what I mean? They view it as like, yeah, like there needs to be a second new wave or something to like revitalize it. Because right now it's not really a thing like it used to be, even in the early 2000s. They're sort of at a weird space, you know what I'm saying, from my understanding, in terms of the industry over there. And here we're at a weird space too, but it's like for opposite reasons almost. You know what I mean? Like, uh, and it's just weird. Yeah, yeah, yes, yeah. You know what I mean? Like synchronicity.
Balance,
Yeah, balance.
balance.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think that if you think of somebody's artistic soul, I think that Lynch and Miike have the same soul, the same type of soul. I think that they are refracted through two different bodies that were born in two different cultures. And I think that the workmanlike attitude and the propensity to make yourself unimportant and more just a cog in a wheel is a factor of Miike's upbringing. But I do think that like if their souls, that core element of them were switched, there would be no change at all. Like if Lynch was Miike and Miike was Lynch, but they had been born in different ways, you'd get that same type. I think it's cultural is what makes them different.
Was it there 2 episodes named Yin Soul and Yang Soul in Onimusha?
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Yin Soul and Yang Soul.
Yin Soul
Yeah.
and Yang Soul.
But I do think, and it's also interesting to me that you bring up, the Japanese film industry and its problems, and then the American industry and its problems, and the concept of balance with a lot of things just doesn't seem to pop up very often. Like, oh, hey, we've gone too far this way. Maybe we can go a little bit this way.
It's always course over correction. It's never like, because now I'm sure they're scrambling for over here. It's like always, what's the next thing? And then viewers start falling off behind whenever the industry can catch up to trying to make a return on their investment on all these fucking zombie projects and then all these fucking superhero projects. And then like, we know it's dead, but we have 5 more years of this shit already in the canon.
Yeah.
So bear with us. And meanwhile, everybody's like, okay, movies suck. Let's go play some video games.
You're gonna go watch Oppenheimer, which people did. And people apparently have been going to see Napoleon, which just shows you that people want different shit. They didn't go watch Indiana Jones 5, but they went to go watch Napoleon. It's because people like diversity naturally. They want to see that shit. Like, give us something good. Do we have final thoughts on Onimusha? I gotta wake up soon to
Yeah,
go
I figured.
teach The Great Gatsby. So we had a week off, and now I have to go teach chapter 5 of The Great Gatsby like nothing happened. So we'll see how that goes.
Final thoughts. I thought it was great. It was. I was pleasantly surprised. I had no expectations going in, other than like the fact that it's Miike was attached. You know, that comes with its own, for me, comes with its own expectations. But beyond that, not really. I was just like, oh yeah, I'm familiar with the game. I didn't realize this was a thing until David actually hit me up about it. I was like, oh, that's a thing. Um, so yeah, I liked it. I thought it was it's definitely worth checking out. I mean, in terms of like all the shit that's on Netflix, I'm like, yeah, like that recently, this has been the only thing besides the new Fincher movie that I was like, oh yeah, this is dope. That's on Netflix. You know what I mean? Which says, for me, that says something if it's dope on Netflix, because so much Netflix is such a fucking like, yeah, it's like the zombies
Dude,
in this
did
movie.
you
Like,
have you
in the
looked
show.
up the compute like the CGI Matrix show that Netflix has?
What?
No. Oh my god, they have a CGI
Go
Matrix.
watch it. It's hilarious. It's
I didn't know.
so
I didn't even
fucking
know they
funny.
had. Oh shit. Yeah, that I need to check that out. So it's a CGI. It's based on the Matrix,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's not like old shit. It's new shit.
Oh, it's new,
Oh
but it
fuck.
looks like dog shit. And it sucks.
Oh fuck. Oh my god. How'd they get their hands on that? Oh my god.
It's under the anime category. If you want to say, I found it scrolling anime. I was like, what is this? And it's the Matrix, but it's like PS2 graphics.
I
It's
remember
pretty.
like I remember they put out the
The
Animatrix.
Animatrix,
Remember
yeah.
that? Yeah, I remember that a long
Yeah.
time
No, this
ago.
is not that. This is the Animatrix was pretty fucking good. But
Yeah, I remember
this
liking
is
that. Yeah.
yeah. Kelby.
Uh yeah, I mean it's full of Miike-isms. It's anime. It's Miike doing anime. Of all the shit he's done, he's finally, worn the anime hat. Uh it feels like Miike. It's badass. Um Yeah, like y'all said, like if you have Netflix, I don't have Netflix. I watched a stolen fucking copy of this shit. I'm not paying for
Where'd you get
Netflix.
that?
I don't know, but no, it just fell out of the sky like a monk opened it up out of the box for me.
Like an email from your friend.
Yeah, like an email from a friend. It just swooped in like a hawk. Final thoughts. Goromoru was one of those, or several of the characters. It's that seven samurai thing, but all of these archetypes have their own personality for real, and like,
Yeah, they're all
the
good at something, and they're all but like the ugly dude can smell good.
right.
Ugly dude with his chin was fucked up too. He had like some sort of like
His
weird.
ugliness never came into like the
Mm,
conversation in the movie either. He's just like, no, he's just that fuck ugly.
yeah, he was pretty fucking ugly. And
Yeah.
then the dude with the eagles, like you said, like this fucking. So didn't one of the characters, the dude with the glasses, say that literally say seven samurai, three are bad or some shit like that, like literally referencing seven
Oh,
samurai.
that was my favorite. Oh, I have to bring this up. So
Mm,
Sayo, who's
mm,
this like nerd with glasses,
mm,
he lives through the whole thing, and he has kind of a double agent thing going on, but not
mm,
really. And then at the end of the show, because he's kind of a bad guy, he has to get his kind of, not really, but kind
mm.
of. And he's in this tunnel walking out, and then the tunnel caves in and just like fucking kills him. I was like,
And
and it's
he
so
brings it back
anticlimactic.
too. That thing from the first episode where he's like seven samurai and three are bad guys.
Mm.
And then when they're like, so we found out who the two traitors are, who's the other traitor? And Modest Yahoo is like, um, he's like, well, a bad guy doesn't necessarily have to be a traitor. And
Mm.
he's like, the third bad guy is me. Ha ha. Ha. But then at the end, Sayo is like, he's like, so the third bad guy was me. Yeah.
Crushed, dead. It's so stupid, but I liked it.
Yeah, this series is great for that. It has several moments like that where there's like, yeah, you're dead, like bye. Yep. Yeah. It's if you haven't watched it, yeah, definitely check. It's worth checking out. It's pretty entertaining. I was pleasantly surprised. So yeah.
Well, Ryan, thank you very much.
Oh.
You're one of my favorite guests. So smart, so knowledgeable.
I try, bro. Thanks for having me on. You guys know that I fuck with Agitator, so you know it's definitely a pleasure to chop it up with you guys as usual.
Yeah,
you know
the Agitator and MAS love is it's a balance. It's a stream that goes back and forth. So all right, fellas, I think we're gonna stop